Hello, Mayor Coleman.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you hear us?
You can't hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear clearly. Good to see you, Michael.
So, Mayor, we can't hear you.
Are we wanting to start at 7 o'clock?
Yeah, so Councilor Vigil, the mayor had asked me, since he's having some difficulties, can you kind of run the meeting until he can get his audio working?
You bet. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're going to start the meeting at 7 o'clock. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Ms. Holly, can you do the roll call?
Yes, sir. Councilor Broyles?
Here.
Councilor Daniel?
Here.
Councilor Griego?
Present.
Councilor Vigil?
Here.
Councilor Carson?
Here.
Councilor Hensley?
Here.
Mayor Coleman? He's here, just having technical difficulties. So all councilors present and a quorum has been declared.
Okay, can we have an agenda approval? Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
There is not.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Mayor,
I move
you
that
call
we
it the
approve.
motion. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I
Go
move
ahead,
that we
Chris.
approve the agenda.
Second.
Holly, roll call, please.
Councilor Broyles?
Yes.
Councilor Daniel?
Yes.
Councilor Griego?
Yes.
Councilor Vigil?
Yes.
Councilor Carson?
Yes.
Councilor Hensley?
Yes.
Mayor Coleman looks like he got off, so the motion carries.
Okay, now we have a citizen comment. Alamosa City Council welcomes your comments. Citizens wishing to speak should have obtained a speaker card, talked to Holly or signed up. Holly, do we have anybody to speak tonight on citizen comment?
We do. We got 2 comment cards submitted, and those, I'm looking to see if they're in the participant screen. If you are here and you submitted a card, if you can raise your hand. If you're on the telephone, dial *9. If you are in the meeting, use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of the screen so I can let you in to speak.
David and Carol Osborne have their hand raised, but they're muted.
Okay, so we have David and Carol Osborne. They want to speak. Can we let them go, Holly?
I let them in. So are you there?
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Please.
Thank you. Yeah, we're here to speak on behalf of Juanito's and Juan Rango's restaurant. I don't know if this is the time or later on the agenda to do that.
It will
Yes, Holly. So that would be later on the agenda, would be the appropriate time.
Yep.
Thank you. We'll wait.
Thank you. Who else do we have, Holly? No one has their hand raised on the attendees.
No, we had an entry submitted from Rochelle Herndon. I do not see her in the attendee list.
Okay.
And then,
Unless she's the phone call listener.
588-3134.
that, I don't know who that is.
Holly, what's
Allow
the,
that one to talk?
so if they want to raise their hand and speak, what do they have to hit? Star what?
9.
Star 9.
Okay, 588-3134. If you want to give a citizen comment, please hit star 9. Okay, yep, that person does. Go ahead, 588.
Hello?
Are they muted?
No, they're not muted.
I guess I don't see them on there. I'm in the wrong panel.
They're in.
3134, you're able to speak for citizen comment. Please go ahead.
Tell them to try pressing star 6 on their phone.
Can you press star 6 and see if that lets you speak?
I have to see it muted them. So if they're on a cell phone, the cell phone's probably muted because that's a system mute.
Okay, so that,
So press it again and then make sure your mute function on the cell phone is not turned on.
star 6, is that what you said?
Star 6 will mute through Zoom.
It looks like there's a person named Joe with his hand up, so I don't know if they switched over.
Maybe they did.
Hello?
Okay, 3134, can you hear us? Can you speak? Nothing. I think we should move on to Joe.
Okay, I'm gonna mute this one.
Okay. Joe, please go ahead. You're also muted, Joe.
Am I on air now?
Yes, sir. Go ahead,
Yes.
please.
I wanted to make a comment on the rezoning of the land near 8th Street and the primary school, if you're going to allow comments tonight on that.
Public comment, Joe.
I canvassed the neighborhood and almost no one wants it rezoned. And especially to high density, they want to rezone it to multiple use. And that does not preclude high density. And the problem most of them come up with is that there's already 150 apartments there, most of them rented to college students. And the traffic on 8th Street is, I mean, there's 128 apartments, you know, double that, cars zooming up and down the street day and night. And that was the main thing. And also there's been theft. One neighbor said that he can't leave his bicycle out in the yard anymore because it gets stolen. I do not feel college rentals create a nice neighborhood. Owner-occupied housing does. And I have spoken to the city planner, and I agree mixed using sounds good, but only if there are multiple owners. This is one owner who wants to build more apartments. And I don't know if Mr. Briego noticed, but Excel just put up double the power lines along 8th Street. And it looks absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
That just happened the last couple of days. And so there are also a number of teenage types in the building, and my mailbox doesn't go a day without being rifled anymore. Also, I just feel if Alamosa needs more rentals, spread the pain around the city. Don't put them all in this area. I have the feeling the owner, Dr. Patterson, he wants to build one building, and the planning commission turned him down. But he owns a couple buildings over on 11th Street, and if it's rezoned, there's nothing stopping him from building, 10 buildings, however many he wants, if it's multiple use. So all of my neighbors are Hispanic. I am Hispanic. My name's Madrid. And they don't know that they can stop these things. They don't know how to stop them. And one guy wanted to, I better not say, suggested we burn them down. No, but anyway, they are not popular. We don't want more of them. That was the main thing I wanted to bring up. You make one person rich on college rentals at the expense of 50 other people. And I guarantee you, now that they've done this wonder job with Excel, I can get everyone on the street to sign. I have about 20 signatures, which I gave to the, I don't know what his position is, but the planning officer that you have, Aspinwall, I think his name. I'd bring up a couple things on Dr. Patterson's idea of a green area is a drainage pond. Yeah, he's going to, when he first built the apartments, he told me he was going to make a lot of money off of college students. And that does appear to be who mostly rents it. It's not families moving into the valley. The apartments are expensive. They're $750 for one bedroom.
I think you're with the 3 minutes now.
Okay.
Thank you
I
very much.
recommend that you do not rezone the land. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could, just to clarify, this is the 3-minute comment period, and anybody can make a comment on any topic they want. If there are comments that people want to have addressed to particular ordinances and have those comments be part of the record, the time to do that is at the public comment period on the second reading. So this ordinance for the rezoning is scheduled for a first reading tonight. Again, this 3-minute comment period, you can make any comments you want, but it's not part of the public record.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I didn't.
Let me finish. The public comment period for ordinances is on the second reading. So for this ordinance, that will be the next meeting on August 19th.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Eric, for that clarification. I appreciate that. Okay. Ms. Martinez, I'm back now, and I apologize for the disconnect. And thank you for running the meeting, Councilor Vigil, for running it while I was briefly. Ms. Martinez, do we have anyone else waiting to make any comments?
We do, and we had the number 3134. They logged off and logged back on. I don't know if they still want to speak, but if they do, if they could raise their hand, they could dial the *9 to let me know. And we have...
For everyone else, can they push mute? Because I think we have some panelists who don't have their mute button pushed, and we're getting some feedback. So sorry, Holly, I did not mean to interrupt, but we're getting some feedback. So if people can make sure they're on mute. Thank you.
Okay. So I have Craig Rogers with his hand up, so I'm going to allow him to speak.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, my comments are regarding the rezoning on 8th Street also. I'm for it, but I'd like my comments to be recorded for the record, so I won't submit my comments until the second reading.
So if I can just interrupt, so I agree with everything the city attorney has shared in regards to the public hearing that will be at the next meeting. But I think from a council perspective, council's very appreciative of anyone that wants to speak in favor or against the item on first reading, because it can potentially influence how council will vote on first reading. But the takeaway from the city attorney's message is to make sure to still attend that second meeting. So I just want to clarify that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brooks.
Okay, well, I can still submit a comment, and you know, I do support the rezoning because, you know, I am up and down 8th Street every day. I do live in the area. It's not all rented out to college kids like people say. There's a lot of good families there that are appreciative of just having a place to rent. You know, $750 sounds like a lot, but you look around town and that's not a lot. That's competitive with everybody else around town. And, you know, Alamosa is growing. So people need a place to lay their heads, and that's just my input right now.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ms. Martinez, do we have anyone else who would like to make any comments?
I have Don Spencer that just raised his hand, so I'm gonna allow him to speak.
Okay.
Okay, so I gotta promote him to panelist because he's using an older version of Zoom. So that's the only way he can talk, I guess. Don, are you there? Hello? Don? No, he's gone.
Is it Don Spencer?
It's Don Spencer.
Because I see him on my screen.
I don't think he has sound on.
Okay. Don, we cannot hear you. Apologize, but we can't hear you at this time. So unless you can unmute your phone system, we may have to move on, but we'll give you a few seconds.
And if there's anyone else who would like to speak, if they're on the phone, dial *9. If you're on the computer, use the raise hand feature.
Looks like he's picking up his phone to make a phone call. While he's doing that, Ms. Martinez, do we have anyone else in the queue?
I do not. I don't have anyone else raising their hand right now.
Okay. Well, I don't see him anymore. So,
hello, this is Don.
Okay.
Can you hear me? This is Don.
Yes, Don. This is Ty Coleman. We can hear you, and you can start making your comments. Just in case you can.
Okay.
Earlier is a 3-minute time limit, so you can start now.
Okay. Well, I'm Don Spencer. I live at 905.5 Main Street in Alamosa. I'm for the rezoning for this project. I'm familiar with it, and I have a number of reasons why. I think it's consistent. I think that as the rezoning is presented, as Deacon's presented it previously, is consistent, compatible with the comprehensive plan, which has been approved by the city for this area and for this use. I'm familiar with the first phase, which would be approximately 16 apartments with mixed use of 1 and 2 bedrooms. And I see it as a much needed addition to some valuable rental inventory, which is lacking in Alamosa, especially on the south side. It's planned to be thought out well and planned well by a good developer, Mike Patterson. just to familiarize people with what's proposed in phase one, it'll have also amenities that aren't normally provided by developers and landlords in any part of Alamosa. Some of the ones that appeal to me personally and others, as a renter myself in Alamosa for the past 6 years with pets, this is one of the only properties that is pet friendly and that allows pets and is very compatible with them being there. They even have a dedicated dog park, which is wonderful and nice, and it's well situated for everybody to use. It's also going to house a health and fitness facility, which Mike Patterson is going to include in the plans, which will be for the use of all the Kiva tenants, and his philosophy of wellness and fitness and health is, I think, much appreciated. It would be a great addition. I don't agree with comments about college students and ASU students do not make good neighbors. I find that offensive, and as I think a lot of people do in the Adams State community. And my familiarity with it is there are some, but it's not primarily housing ASU students. So I think that's not a valid comment. So lastly, and I'll just comment, I'm familiar with Mike and his development commitment to Alamosa. I think we would be lucky to have someone of the caliber of Mike Patterson, who has done a good job of his projects that he's done previously. He's very attentive to the needs of the area, and the overriding, I think, important part about all the rezoning is his commitment to commercial development in an area that otherwise might not have the attention or the appeal that others might try to give to it for that purpose. So I truly believe it's a good project. It's one that's much needed in Alamosa. It'll be a quality project that that the city needs and the South Side needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Ms. Martinez, do we have anyone else in the queue? No.
We do not have anyone with their hand raised.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So now we'll turn it back over to our city manager and our city attorney for any further comments.
There's no staff follow-up.
Okay. All right. So
Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Griego. Yes, Councilor Griego.
Can you hear me? Because I keep hearing a lot of buzzing.
I can hear you, Councilor Griego.
Okay. If I can make a comment, or can I ask a quiet question? Is Don Spencer the architect for that subdivision?
I'm not for sure, Councilor Griego.
And I didn't want to interrupt while he was talking, so that's why I didn't ask at the time. So, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So Councilor Griego, Don, are you still on and want to answer that, or? Deacon, are you on? I believe he is, Charlie, but I haven't worked directly with him, so I'd like maybe Deacon to confirm that.
That is correct.
Okay.
He's the architect for the project, for at least
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, Councilor Griego. Okay, Council, we're going to go ahead and move on down to ceremonial items. We have a proclamation for the National Health Center Week. As a team, as council members, we usually share in reading these proclamations, and I've asked Councilor Daniel to help us by reading this proclamation tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity. So National Health Center Week 2020, community health centers lighting the way for healthier communities today and in the future. Whereas for over 50 years, community health centers have provided high quality, affordable, comprehensive primary and preventive health care in our nation's underserved communities, delivering value to and having a significant impact on America's healthcare system. Whereas, as the country's largest primary care network, community health centers are the healthcare home for 30 million Americans in over 14,000 communities across the nation. 1 in every 12 people in the United States gets their care in a community health center. Whereas community health centers are a critical element of the health system, serving both rural and urban communities and often providing the only accessible and dependable source of primary care in their communities. Nationwide, community health centers serve 1 in every 5 residents of rural areas. Whereas every day, community health centers develop new approaches to integrating a wide range of services beyond primary care, including oral health, vision, behavioral health, and pharmacy services to meet the needs and challenges of their communities. Whereas community health centers are governed by patient majority boards, ensuring that the patients of each health center are engaged in their own healthcare decisions. Whereas community health centers are locally owned and operated small businesses that serve as critical economic engines, helping to power local economies by generating $54.6 billion in economic activity in some of the country's most economically deprived communities. Whereas community health centers nationally employ more than 236,000 people, including physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and certified nurse midwives who work as part of multidisciplinary clinical teams designed to treat the whole patient. Whereas the community health center model continues to prove an effective means of overcoming barriers to healthcare access, including geography, income, and insurance status, improving healthcare outcomes and reducing healthcare system costs. Whereas community health centers reduce overall costs of care by helping manage patients' chronic conditions, which keeps them out of costlier healthcare settings like hospital emergency rooms. Whereas community health centers are on the front lines of emerging healthcare crises, providing access to care for our nation's veterans, addressing the opioid epidemic, and responding to public health threats in the wake of natural disasters. Whereas National Health Center Week offers the opportunity to celebrate America's over 1,400 health center organizations with over 12,000 service delivery sites, their dedicated staff, board members, patients, and all those responsible for their continued success and growth since the first health centers opened their doors more than 50 years ago. Whereas during National Health Center Week, we celebrate the legacy of America's community health centers and their vital role in shaping the past, present, and future of America's healthcare system. Now, therefore, the Mayor, Ty Coleman, and the entire City Council do hereby proclaim August 9th through 15th, 2020 as National Health Center Week. I encourage all to take part in this week by celebrating the important partnership between Valley-wide health systems and the communities it serves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Daniel, for reading that proclamation. And I believe we have, it's Jana Arnold
yes.
on the phone to accept it. Would you like to say a few words?
Just a couple words, Mayor Coleman and City Council members. I would just like to take a moment to share my appreciation for the acknowledgement of the work that we do in community health centers. It means a lot to our communities and to the nation as a whole. So thank you very much for acknowledging that for us.
You're welcome, and thank you for all the hard work and dedication that you and your team put into you do. Do we have any other council members who would like to make any comments at this time? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so thank you so much.
Mayor, Councilor Daniel has her hand raised.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. Valley-wide serves every community in the San Luis Valley and partners with many others. And I just wanted to say thank you to the CEO, Jana, for all of the work that her team does and the people that they serve. The flagship clinic that they started with is the Alamosa Family Medical Center, connected to the hospital. And so they've really grown a lot and have branched out even past the San Luis Valley in order to serve rural communities who need them. So I just wanted to express my thanks for that and for my job, but really my thanks for that because of the work that community health centers do.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. I appreciate that. Okay. All righty. So that brings us to the next item on the agenda. Ms. Martinez, could you pull that agenda back up on the screen if you don't mind? I believe that's going to be the next. Thank you.
There now.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the proclamation celebrating the National Parks and Recreation Month and Parks and Recreation Professional Day in the city of Alamosa. As I mentioned earlier, it's a team effort here on City Council, and tonight I've asked Councilor Griego to read this proclamation and give us a little bit more detail about what's going on because he participates on the Park and Rec Board. Go ahead, Councilor Griego.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I read the proclamation, being on council for so many years, I remember when back in 1983 when we used to fund this at $40,000, the whole program, and we didn't even have a rec department. So right now we have a first-class rec department, and Jeremy and his staff do a great job with our parks. Everybody enjoys the park. I got a park in front of my house that everybody from all over the community comes and they enjoy it. So I'd like to make those comments, and if Holly can put that proclamation up, I will go ahead and read that, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Okay. Parks and Recreation Proclamation. Whereas since 1985, the National Parks Recreation Association has recognized July as Parks and Recreation Month, celebrating the achievement of parks and recreation agencies across the country. And whereas the City of Alamosa Parks and Recreation Department support the physical and mental health of our community by maintaining parks and providing activities for all people. Their efforts aid in the fight against obesity, encourage healthy habits in children, and promote well-being. And whereas parks protect the natural environment and open space for the enjoyment of members of the community now and the future. These green spaces further benefit human health by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, increase biodiversity, thereby improving ecosystem functioning, reducing the impact of floods. And whereas 83% of adults in the U.S. Okay, they moved the thing. Whereas 83% of the adults in the U.S. consider visiting parks, trails, and open spaces during the COVID-19 pandemic to be essential for their mental and physical health. And whereas parks and recreation professionals across the state of Colorado have worked tireless throughout the COVID-19 crisis to ensure that local parks, trails, open spaces remain accessible to all Colorados, including the over 24-mile trails in Alamosa. Whereas the many benefits of the Colorado's great vast outdoors has helped Coloradans stay active and healthy throughout the COVID-19. And whereas the parks and recreation professional adapt existing procedures to fit new and changing public health guidelines, always prioritizing the safety and well-being of all. And whereas the parks and recreation professionals have done a great job in maintaining and safety standard in spite of record rising. Can you scroll that up a little bit, Holly, please? Thank you. Whereas park and recreation professionals adapt existing procedures to fit new and changing public health guidelines, always prioritizing the safety and well-being of all. And whereas the park and recreation professionals have done great work to maintain cleanliness and safety standards in spite of record trail use, ensuring equitable access for all Coloradans. And whereas Colorado parks and rec professionals desire ample recognition for a job well done, exceptional. Whereas Jairus Polish, governor of the state of Colorado, has designated July 2020 as Park and Recreation Month and July 28th, 2020 as Park and Recreation Professional Day as. Whereas the City of Alamosa recognizes the importance of parks and recreation for Alamosa and wish to still recognize our parks and recreation professionals by adopting this local version of the proclamation today.
Thank you.
Therefore, it be resolved, the City Council hereby proclaim July 22 as Recreation and Parks Day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilor Rego, for reading that. I appreciate it. Is Andy on the Zoom tonight?
Yeah, Mayor, you've got 3 Parks and Rec people here. You got Andy, Jess, and John.
Okay, so we have Andy, Jess, and John. Would you all like to make some comments? We sure appreciate it.
Sure, Mayor, Council. Thank you. First of all, just a big thank you to Council for your support. My staff make me look good. The rest of the city, we're a team. And then the public for their participation and support. Very proud of what we've done and our team, and again, appreciate your support. So thank you.
You're welcome. Did the other 2 want to make any comments? Jess or John?
Hey, this is Jess. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, very humbled by this. Thank you. We have a great team, as Andy said. Very humbled again, for this recognition. So thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Hi, this is John here. Yeah, just thank you for the recognition. I really appreciate it, and I love the opportunity to work for the city, and really proud of all the work that we get to do. So thank you, Council, and thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you all for all the work you do. We have a few hands up that would like to make a few comments. So it looks like I have Councilor Hensley, followed by Councilor Daniel.
So I just want to thank everybody from the Rec and Park Board for everything they do. One of the pastimes my 2 granddaughters and I have is going from park to park all throughout Alamosa. The girls just love to do that. And then even while the parks were closed, we actually really started to explore more of the trails because we did the bike riding and did different hikes and things like that. And they were ecstatic when the parks reopened again. And so we could start doing our ventures. And so just, wow, we're just so blessed with all of the outdoor activities we have. So just wanted to share that and thank everybody who's part of that.
Thank you, Councilor Hensley. Next, we have Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I am consistently impressed with our entire city team, and I love participating in the Parks and Rec activities. You guys do a wonderful job. I am so proud to be a part of our city and show off our trails and know that we have lots of outdoor activities, and our city leagues are run extremely well. Our trails and the partnerships that the Parks and Rec team have with all members of our community is just one of the things I think I'm most proud of, and that I think makes it really, really special to be a part of that team and our team here at the city. I was talking to someone who is a close relative of another Parks and Rec director in another small town. And it was the first thing I said was, I can connect you with people if you need to talk about how things are going or times, what to do in times of COVID. I know our team would love to talk to you about what they've done. And it's just so nice to be able to have that resource and just know that you all are great at what you do and you take the time to train and educate and really develop your teams. So thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Up next, we have Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I just want to echo what Ms. Hensley and Ms. Daniel have said. Our Parks and Recs is like the shining light in the valley. It's unbelievable. All the hard work that they do, all the work they do to keep on getting grant money after grant money after grant money for all of our projects. Like Ms. Hensley, since COVID happened, my wife and the girls go for walks almost daily, and the upkeep of our trail systems and seeing all the wildlife and the runners, and it's been awesome that, you know, maybe one of the good things about COVID is that people are getting out moving again. And so I'm glad that we have the facilities and the trails and the wildlife and the lakes and the rivers and the ponds and the fishing and so on and so on and so on to meet the needs of people, especially during this time. So Andy, Jess, and John, and everybody else involved, thank you very much.
Okay. Do we have any other hands any other comments from any other council members? I don't see any hands raised. So I too would like to thank the entire Parks and Rec team. You all do such a wonderful job working together to make all of the facilities look nice and clean and safe for the public. I was very impressed with the way things are being ran right now. I also had an opportunity this past month, to have a Kiwanis meeting at one of the parks, and it was just great for us to finally get a chance to have an outdoor meeting in one of our parks that was very well maintained, and appreciate everything that you all do. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, and thank you, Councilor Griego, for those kind words on the unsung heroes of the Parks Division too. So appreciate you.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Councilor Griego, for reading the proclamation. We appreciate that. So that brings us down to another ceremonial item. This one I am very proud and very honored and very glad to be able to recognize Councilor Hensley for her role as president of the CML Executive Board this past year, which I must say she did a tremendous job. It seems like that year went by fast. Last year, I believe all of the council members had to wear all these bright colored shirts and activities so we could bring recognition to Councilor Hensley, and the team showed up with all these colors. I mean, people still talking about those bright colors you all wore to bring attention to Councilor Hensley. But Councilor Hensley, on behalf of the entire City Council, we greatly appreciate your service on the CML board this past year, President. And I'm just going to allow them to go ahead and make any comments, and we just want to recognize you and show our appreciation for your service. Okay, so looks like I have Councilor Vigil, his hand is up, followed by Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just Ms. Hensley, all the work you've done. I can't even imagine how much work you've had to do being the president for CML. And you always talk about all the meetings after meetings after meetings, and then doing this during COVID and all this stuff is like, wow. Just one of the things I want to highlight that Ms. Hensley did for Alamosa. So she helped further put Alamosa on the map across the state when they hosted the retreat last summer, and having all those big wigs from across the state come down to Alamosa and the Ruby Slipper and taking them out to here and there and there. That's just, it was like top notch. It was professional. It was just awesome. So that little piece that you did there, Ms. Hensley, went a long way for Alamosa. So thank you for your service on that.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. Liz, this is so, I can't believe it's been a year, kind of like what Mayor Coleman said. This is just you've done such a neat job and such a good job, I think, pulling everyone together. I think that's one of your strengths that you just have innately. And I can't imagine the transition during COVID. So thank you for that hard work. I think my favorite memory when Councilor Vigil was talking about the Ruby Slipper, I think my favorite memory was when you introduced the governor and you introduced the mayor of Denver, and we're trying to figure out like some special thing about him that no one knew, and he was all surprised when you knew it. I mean, you just do a really good job of making, I think, CML and us as Alamosa and as just city councilors really human and really accessible. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that, and I think your work, you did a great job with everything that you did as the president of CML. So thank you.
Okay, up next we have Councilor Brawls. Thank you, Councilor Daniel.
I want to echo the same thing. Councilor Hensley. Thanks for your leadership, your initiative and energy. It took a lot of, you're involved in a lot of things, and I'm impressed that you're able to balance those balls. And thank you again for your leadership in CML. I think it means a lot to Alamosa and also throughout the state. So again, I want to echo that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brawls. Councilor Griego.
Thank you, Mayor. Liz, thank you so much for, I don't see how you do all this stuff. You know, you're quite involved at the college. You put not only Alamosa, but the Valley on the map. And by bringing, like Councilor Vigil says, the big wigs, I don't know who those guys are. But anyway, bringing those guys here and introducing them to Alamosa and the people here, that's, you know, I've been here a long time, Liz, and for you to come in and do what you've done has been amazing. And your tireless effort, your leadership, you've done a great job. Thank you so much for being part of the council and helping our community. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Up next.
I have grown to respect you greatly over the last 3 years. You are a rock and roller for sure. You get things done. I appreciate what you do for this city every day, and I commend you. And it was a quick year. I was very psyched that you were at the helm of that ship, and it went by way too fast. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I know the rest of council does. You're a great leader, and we're lucky to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Carson. Ms. Brooks and Ms. Martinez made it possible for us to actually create and develop a plaque for Councilor Hensley. And to your left of the screen, you'll see us actually giving her the plaque pre this meeting today. We thought that this was more of a special occasion, and we didn't want to miss the opportunity to hand her a plaque of recognition on behalf of the City Council as well as staff. Did any staff members want to say anything? I didn't see any hands, but if you wanted to say something at this time, I just wanted to make sure I gave you an opportunity to say any comments that you may have for Councilor Hensley at this time as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, you know, everything that the people could see on the outside as Liz led the Colorado Municipal League board, but she was always very sensitive of wanting to make sure that she was representing the Valley and weighing in appropriately from a Valley voice. And there's tons of emails behind the scenes as the board would be discussing different items that Liz would send Holly or I just to check and say, what do you think the Alamosa or the Valley's opinion would be on this issue? And so I think, you know, being able to be in that role and continuing to remain sensitive of representing that sometimes that there might be a difference in that rural voice compared to some of the metro voices, but yet she did it so graciously, and as Councilor Daniel mentioned, bringing people together. And so it's been great to watch and to see what Liz has done for our community at that state level. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brooks. All right, so Councilor Hensley, we'll turn it over to you to make some comments. But once again, thank you for all of your hard work and dedication this past year as the CML president. We greatly appreciate everything you've done.
Well, thank you, everybody. I couldn't have done this without all of your support. I will tell you, moving up the ranks, obviously starting off as secretary, treasurer, and then the vice president, and then the president, I have learned so much. Obviously, I learned a lot being on city council, being the mayor pro tem last year for Alamosa, and then so much with CML. And I think the combination of what I've learned at CML, and especially, I will tell you, once coronavirus hit, my job at CML, even though we didn't have official meetings where we met face to face, the amount of Zoom meetings and the amount of different things that I was involved in because of all of the suddenness. One of the things I think is really, I like to think, as Heather said is I truly had Alamosa and the San Luis Valley in mind the whole time that I was going through this process. And I wanted to make sure that rural Colorado was always noticed and thought of when decisions were made. And I do think one of the things that, if there's a plus or a silver lining to COVID, is all of our senators and stuff really know about Alamosa, because I obviously represented CML. So they kept hearing about Alamosa or me being from Alamosa. And I think, you know, in a way it sort of put it on the forefront. So I'm hoping that we continue to build that traction. But it's been a very proud moment for me to be part of CML, but I couldn't have done it without the support of all of you. And you all have touched me today. I was definitely a little sad that we didn't have our conference, but what you've just done today has totally made up for it. And I want you to know that plaque is hanging in a very prominent spot in my office. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilor Hensley. And thank you, Ms. Martinez, for all your work and behind the scenes of getting the plaque on behalf of council and staff. We appreciate that. Congratulations. All righty. Can't wait for us to have an in-session meeting one of these days. All right. I'm an extrovert, so this stuff is killing me, you all. All right, here we go. Let's go. The next item on the agenda is consent calendar A. All right. So do we have, let me see here. Do we have any?
Move that we approve consent calendar A.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion? Councilor Daniel, I see your hands up. Nope. Okay, no further discussion. All right. Ms. Martinez, will you take the vote?
Yes, sir. Mayor Coleman?
Yes.
Councilor Daniel?
Yes.
Councilor Griego?
Yes.
Councilor Vigil?
Yes.
Councilor Carson?
Yes.
You said his head.
Councilor Hensley?
Yes.
Councilor Broyles?
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. That brings us down to regular business, Public Works, item 1A, the first reading of ordinance number 16-2020. I think you're muted, Heather.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm gonna keep this fairly brief. I think this is an issue that for most of council, you're aware that it's something we've been working with 2 property owners for about 5 years at this point in time. Holly, were you gonna bring up the map, the display for this? There is a small section of 12th Street that currently separates 2 properties. It is not needed in the future from a city perspective as far as to be developed as a road. There's a little bit of some undeveloped property, but it can be accessed from a different location. And that piece of property that we want to look at vacating, as soon as that comes up, we can take a look at that. One of the property owners' building, which was built a long time ago, was built onto that public right-of-way. So really at this point in time, even if we wanted to build a street, we would not be able to build a street on that. And so based on the discussions we've had with the property owners, and I spoke with Ms. Sadie Martinez just yesterday, we need to go ahead from a city perspective and just vacate that. Per state statute, that would give half of it to the property to the north and the other half to the property to the south. They will need to work from a civil basis on how to maybe do a lot line adjustment, but they're both aware of that. They have hired a professional to take a look at how that lot line adjustment can be handled, and that's something they can move forward with in the future.
It's being really slow to open, but I think it's almost there.
Okay. With that, I can answer any questions, and I was just looking at the chat, so sorry. There we go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can see this is just a small little piece of 12th Street. These properties that are located just south of that 12th Street can be accessed from an alleyway off of 13th Street. So there's still access for the other properties. And this just cleans it up, because unless we were to require Ms. Martinez to demolish that apartment complex, there really is no way for us to build a street. So this is just the first step to get this cleaned up. And I can entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Brooke. Okay, looks like we have Councilor Grego.
Yes, I'm still hearing a lot of that buzzing, but I'd like to thank Heather for meeting with these people and finally getting this program done. We've been trying to work with this for I don't know how many years, and you answered my question, because that lot line that will have to be adjusted because it seems like Mrs. Martinez, that the property, the building there even goes into Mr. Gutierrez's part if he gets that part, you know. So thank you, Heather, and for all the, you worked a lot hard on this to try to get both of these people together and working, and finally got it done. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other hands raised. So if anyone would like to make a motion.
Ty, I'll make a motion that,
Sure.
Hold on, I lost my screen. I'll make a motion that we pass on first reading ordinance 1620, vacating portion of 12th Street between Alamos Avenue and platted alley bordering lots 3235 block 100 Lake Avenue subdivision.
I'll second.
And set it for public hearing,
Yes, set it for public hearing. I apologize.
August 19th.
On August 9th, 18th, 19th. 18th.
19th.
Okay. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Do we have any further discussion? I don't see any hands raised. Ms. Martinez, will you take the vote, please?
Yes, sir. Councilor Broyles?
Yes.
Councilor Hensley?
Yes.
Councilor Carson?
Yes.
Councilor Vigil?
Yes.
Councilor Griego?
Yes.
Councilor Daniel?
Yes.
Mayor Coleman?
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay. Waiting on that agenda to show back up, Ms. Martinez. We good? There we go. Thank you. All righty. So that brings us to the next item, is item 1B, first reading of ordinance number 18-2020.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Council. Ordinance number 18-2020 seeks to rezone 3 tracts of land. I'm going to see, Holly, would you give me permission to share my screen really quick?
Yeah, let me, Do you have the button now?
Thank you. Excuse me. This ordinance would seek to rezone 3 tracts of land between West 8th and West 10th Street to the to the west of 285. This ordinance would seek to rezone this property here as residential high in order to essentially adjust this lot line and add a 16-unit apartment building as well as a rec center for the area tenants. In addition to rezoning this large tract to mixed use, and then this other tract here is mixed use as well. You know, when we took the comprehensive plan to the citizens, one of the things that really came out of this was the concept of mixed use. You know, mixed use has a lot of benefits, and in kind of modern planning theory, the idea of segregating uses is kind of a no-no. You know, when you think of some of the neatest places you travel to, the places that have a sense of neighborhood, the places that really, you know, really stick out as a place that you want to be and live and shop, tend to have these integrations of different uses. So with this request, you know, this opens up certainly many more development opportunities, including commercial business, but additionally housing, which, you know, was talked about earlier. This certainly makes this property more marketable. So, you know, more potential investors would want to develop there. And, you know, additionally, you know, mixed use, you know, it makes more walkable neighborhoods. It increases socioeconomic diversity. You know, it gives workplaces, you know, workers to, you know, that are very close by and shoppers. It provides all that demand. And it also reduces this sense of NIMBYism, not in my backyard. And when we're looking at the code and thinking about the other things that are going on as far as the revitalization of this section of town, you know, we've got the Streets Trust Fund, where we're rebuilding a substantial number of streets. We've also got the Washington Drainage Addition that's going on. And so, you know, we're really at the beginning of what I think is an exciting time for this part of town. And we're going to really see it blossom as a, you know, being reinvented and reinvigorated. So, you know, with that, you know, the 2017 comprehensive plan, you know, lots of public input. This was one of the areas that was a high candidate for mixed use. And also in some of our past work sessions and discussions between city staff and council, this was also discussed as being a prime opportunity for that. And, you know, I do want to kind of address a little bit of an elephant in the room about the construction of Monroe Avenue. I know that some folks are aware of a requirement to build Monroe Avenue. That requirement still exists. So when this was first developed, I believe in 2010, you know, there were a few different individuals involved. And one of the requirements was that once development happened either adjacent to Monroe Avenue or by 2030, you know, this street would have to be rebuilt. And so the applicant is very aware of that, certainly willing and intends to use, you know, the existing property to leverage funds to build that street. As we all know, especially after last year, building streets is expensive. And so this, you know, provides, you know, a little bit of some financial sureties for that to happen. So all rezoning requests have to be evaluated by the UDC, and there's really 3 major points that it has to check. You know, it's got 3 check marks. So it has to have historic resource protection or mitigate any natural hazards. Doesn't imply in this scenario, it's not in the floodplain. There's no known historical resources there. The second thing is compatibility with public benefits. So really that means, is it in conformance with our adopted plans, including the comprehensive plan, which it certainly is, comes right out of the comprehensive plan. And then it has to meet at least one of alternative standards. Staff finds that it meets standards 1 and 3, mostly because it would implement the vision of the comprehensive plan and also improve economic opportunity. The other elephant I want to address in the room is, you know, so the process for a rezoning request first gets heard by Planning Commission, and Planning Commission makes a recommendation to City Council. And Planning Commission's recommendation to City Council was to deny the rezone request. Now, unfortunately, there wasn't any findings that were issued with this, so I don't want to put any words in their mouths, but there was, you know, public opposition, same that you heard earlier this evening, you know, very much the similar arguments. So I certainly imagine that those were the, you know, helping to determine the factors. For myself,
ask a question, because the thing is in the communication, you have one map, and I'm confused as to what you're requesting to be rezoned. Is it this large section in the first map, or is it the pieced out section in Exhibit A? Because if it's the large section in this first map, this is a whole different conversation. So I'm just trying to understand which section we're actually talking about. Does it encompass all of it, or?
That's a great question. So the map that's in the communication is what was straight from the comprehensive plan. So based on the community's input, that was where the community would like to see. It's what they call it the mixed use opportunity area. And what I've got here up on the screen is within that mixed use opportunity area. So this is a smaller part of that bigger part.
But passing this ordinance wouldn't just rezone this small area, it would rezone the entire section in the large map, correct?
That's not, no. So this ordinance would only rezone this tract, tract 3, tract 5, and then tract 6. So it wouldn't rezone that entire area.
The orange sections right here that are labeled MU.
Right, right.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification, because yeah,
Sure.
that was a whole different conversation if that was the case.
Certainly. So once again, Planning Commission, I do want to do right by them and certainly discuss the fact that they did recommend denial. However, as code administrator and reading the code, my job, I don't care who the developer is. I don't care, anything beyond, does it follow the code? And this abundantly does so. And I think certainly, with the fiscal impact, this also brings a lot of things, hypothetically, if this was developed into housing, the city needs housing and jobs follow people. So, we think about this commercial property that's been vacant for a long time and there's really not many external market factors that are going on that's going to encourage that to develop. So, by rezoning it to mixed use, it provides more opportunities. So, as staff, we certainly recommend the approval of the ordinance. But I do want Kathy Woods to have a chance to talk a little bit about the economic side as well.
Thank you, Mr. Aspinwall. Ms. Woods?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councilor and staff, and thanks for giving me a few moments of your time to talk to this through an economic development perspective, which I think Deacon touched on much of it, but we seldom have a developer that is able to do a project like this. We just don't have those opportunities very often. And I think this particular developer has done a good job with his properties. He owns the property. I think he does a very good job. We have talked for a long time as staff and as a community and with people that advise us about the opportunities to develop to the south. We're going west quite a bit, and that's a good thing, but it's time to go to the south. Let's give, some opportunity to that community. Deacon touched on this development leading to possible commercial development over there in the future, and I believe that will happen. We have a developer willing to continue his development. If we lose this section, I'm not sure we'll have that, and it's rare. So from an economic development perspective, I humbly ask for your consideration of this project. It really does fit with the plan that we've come to. We all attended, or a bunch of us attended a forum a while back, early this spring. And the thought was multi-use is a really good way to go for a lot of these things, and just to allow opportunities to develop. And that's where we're trying to go with this. We also have an opportunity to continue growing to the south with this development and make Alamosa great. Workforce housing is something that we notice as we get phone calls in the city of people thinking about small industry or other developments. Our workforce housing is lacking, and this is an opportunity to help grow that. So I humbly ask for council's consideration as you go further with this development project to look favorably upon it with all the given considerations that we've presented to you tonight. So thank you for allowing me the time.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Ms. Woods, and thank you, Mr. Aspinwall. Looks like Councilor Rawls has his hand up.
Yeah, do you know the residences that Joe said he had 20 residents that were opposed to this project, opposed this rezoning? You know where those residents may be located?
Certainly. So I do have the petition as the citizen commented earlier. The majority of them are along 8th Street, and some of them are elsewhere, kind of in that general vicinity.
Yet track 3, 4, and 5 is to the south, right?
That's correct. Those tracks are on West 10th, correct.
Okay. All righty. So looks like we have next Miss Councilor Hensley, followed by Councilor Carson.
Hey, Deacon, I have a question for you, and this is not directly about this, but I think it would help for future is that when the Planning Commission does come up with something where they're not supporting the recommendation or the idea, is that if maybe they could pass on to you their reasoning, just so that it gives us just, you know, because right now we're just guessing at why they wouldn't. And so anyway, so I was thinking more for future, if something like this happens, if maybe you could help with that, that would be awesome.
Certainly. And, you know, in their defense, it was our first full-fledged Planning Commission meeting over Zoom. And, you know, I think there were just some external factors that made that a little bit more difficult. But certainly well taken. It was difficult to write for their behalf precisely for what the reason you're saying.
No, and I totally understand. Like I say, it wasn't a criticism, but I just think it helps for future.
Certainly.
Councilor, thank you, Councilor Hensley. Councilor Carson.
I was actually just going to ask the same thing that Liz did. It's a little concerning to me because usually, you know, the Planning Commission's word is gospel in most cases. We get it, and that's what we go with. And so, I'm kind of curious as to what their reasoning was. And I deal with a ton of Zoom issues every day. I've been in about 1,000 meetings in the last 6 months, and literally probably 150. And I don't see that as a good enough excuse for them not to give us a reason as to why they didn't. I mean, you know, Zoom or technical difficulties are not a good reason to not give you an answer as to why they're not making a recommendation. So, you know, I don't see this as a bad thing. We need housing. I really do not see this as a negative. I just don't see that as a good enough excuse as not to give background as to why you're making a no recommendation on something. So, you know, if we could fix that in the future, because I trust you guys. I trust, you know, Kathy's word definitely. I know that it's a good direction, but you know, like I say, typically we just jump on whatever they say, or at least back them up for sure, because they've done their due diligence. And this is one of those situations that was a little off-putting. So I'd appreciate something like that in the future, or something more in the future. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Councilor Carson. Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I too am hopeful to hear more from the Planning Commission, but what I appreciate most, I think, about the staff recommendation in the background is that it meets all of the elements of changing a zone. And so I do think new things are scary for people, and I think change is difficult regardless of where we are, and things are difficult, right? So I believe that what we want to do is have, I'm getting a really bad echo.
You want some people to mute if they're not talking. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry, team. But it has met all of the requirements that we would have for switching a zone. It does bring housing in. I like that it's not all going to be residential high. I think that was a big concern of the first gentleman who spoke, but that it will just be changed to a mixed use possibility and things like that. And I really appreciate the time and energy spent tying this back to our comprehensive plan, as well as looking at all of the requirements that we have laid out. I agree with everyone else about having more information from the Planning Commission. I think that's really important. I also am hopeful to hear more if this gets passed in the second reading, so people can tell us what those concerns from them may have been. Adding more people to Alamosa is not necessarily like, we've talked about wanting to increase people. So I do think that we just need to balance, you know, the equity of housing availability and services availability to all parts of our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. We have Councilor Griego, followed by Councilor Carson.
Thank you, Mayor. I was finally able to get into my own computer. Now I can hear what you guys are saying, because you were beeping and bleeping. After that presentation, I didn't even hear it. But anyway, I was born and raised in this area, and the area we're talking about right now used to be a livestock area where it stunk the area. Now that we're starting to put the streets and everything, get everything straightened up, we said with past council, we got to be careful how we develop this area. We don't want to go back to the stockyards and all this other stuff. You know, this area is going to develop with housing, and right now there's a lot of that residential high. I think that's enough housing there of that kind. So we got to be careful how we develop it. We're not against, and I've talked to a lot of people out there, we're not against economic development. You know, in fact, we want economic development, but we need to be careful how we do it. And I'm so happy that a lot of people that have built nice homes, regular homes over there, are speaking out. They're saying, hey, enough's enough. This is our community. This is our area. We want to beautify it. We want it to be nice, just like in other subdivisions. When you're born and raised there and you get stuff just shoved down on you, the taste doesn't taste good. So I'm glad that these people are finally speaking out. And if the planning commission denied it, there had to be a reason. The people, this is an area that's going to affect the people that live there. You know, there's people that are speaking for it that don't even live there. The developers, the architect is speaking for it. He's the architect. He's got to speak for it. You know, this is not right. We have been fighting that Monroe Street for a long time. And I know that back then, there's only one counselor, Councilor Vigil, just barely came on when we were still having the fight about this. I don't know how the minutes got changed, but the second set of units that he put in there should have made that Monroe Street come in. And now he's saying that if you read the communication, that eventually he's going to tie track 3 to track 1, which will make it all one track. Well, you know, he's like circumventing, he's going around to try to put this thing together. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair to the residents in this area. You know, enough's enough, you know, we got to, me as a counselor, I got to be careful how we develop this area here. And if we don't do it right, we're going to live, the people that live in that area will have to suffer with all this stuff, you know. You got to see the traffic in that area. We're right there by a school. We got 2 beautiful elementary schools there, you know, and this traffic is, geez, it's incredible. You know, and this guy right now, Mr. Patterson, he's feeding all of this stuff on into 8th Street. I don't know how many cars are trying to get out in the morning. You ought to go there in the mornings, try to see, you know, what's going on. I agree that we need economic development, but we need to move it somewhere else, you know, and do it somewhere else. And this is, I don't agree with what's going on here. And I'm so happy. I hope that for the public hearing, if this even goes that far, that the people show up, a lot of people show up and voice their opinion, because they live there. You know, when people that don't live there and live in other nicer neighborhoods that don't have to put up with this stuff, voice that they want to support this, it's wrong, you know. So I'm glad, and I didn't like the remark that Joe made. I'm a graduate of Adams State College, and I support Adams State College 100%, you know, but I don't think it's right that what we're doing to these people in there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Councilor Vigil. Oh, did you?
So I really like what Ms. Daniel said about equitable housing across the city. We all know that there's the potential, and I think there's going to be some housing coming up right next to the high school. And it's going to be maybe lower income housing. Is that right, Heather? You're shaking your head yes. Okay, so we need to have those tough conversations like we've mentioned in the past. I think at the last meeting, having those tough conversations and doing it, and then using what Charlie Gregor said, like doing it the right way, developing the right way. All that stuff can be married together. You know, Charlie brought up Mr. Gregor brought up the ideas and the thoughts about if this guy were to build another unit, that he had to pave Monroe. And I talked to city manager today earlier, and we talked about that for about 5 minutes. And then she sent us all, as you guys know, some of the history and the documentation of that from the past, and it's not in there. And that's kind of, you know, I just really want Monroe to be paved. It just has to happen. And I guess my thing is, moving forward, is there a way that we can put in the agreement now that if this is going to go through, that he has to get Monroe done? That's something I want the council to consider. And then as far as the Planning and Zoning Commission is concerned, I agree with a lot of what you all are saying, that I want to know more why they denied the request. I understand it was the first meeting in COVID and the Zoom and that. I get all that stuff, but I would like to know more why they denied it, and then I would like to know more from the community, from the immediate community there, what they feel. And yet at the same time, Alamosa's growing. People are moving here. We gotta get moving here. You know, this is people, this is jobs, this is economic development. This is good for Alamosa. And if we can do it right, I think we can do it here. I guess my main concern is, let's get Monroe paved, and the planning and zoning thing, why did they deny it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. I don't see any other hands raised at this time. I take that back. Councilor Carson.
So with what Jan said, with what Councilor Vigil said, if we're going to approach it in that way, then wouldn't that mean that we would have to rewrite the proposed ordinance, adding in some sort of stipulation that he paves Monroe? Because I agree with Charlie and Jan. I mean, we do need development. We do need that. That's a really harsh reality right now. We need housing in Alamosa. And him building, I mean, I don't live in that neighborhood. There are a ton of apartments right there. You know, then you go up the block, there's more apartments. You know, that's kind of the theme there. And I see that, but I guess before we make a decision, we should hear both sides, and we do have to hear from the people in Charlie's neighborhood, because one of the questions that I had earlier was, I was going to ask Charlie how he felt about it, because I hadn't heard that publicly, and I hadn't heard how the people in the neighborhood had felt. So I just think if we are going to move forward at all, we do need to address that, and possibly look. I haven't gone back in the history and looked at the original agreement. So I'm not privy to that information yet, but I think we do need to look at that and take all that into consideration before we shoot from the hip. So.
Thank you, Councilor Carson.
Thank you.
Councilor Brawls.
Well, I agree, but I guess a couple of words bother me when councilmen say we got to do it right. I think we're trying to do it right. I guess I still have the question. I read the correspondence. Manager Brooks, what triggers, according to that agreement, what triggers developing Monroe or building Monroe?
And I will make sure Deacon and Eric are here to jump in if I misstate something. There is both a development and a timeline trigger, although the timeline trigger is, I believe, like 2030. Deacon or Eric, is that correct? And then the second part is if this property, so when you see the blue residential medium and the yellow residential high, that property just south where the arrow is going. If any of that property develops, then that's what triggers the construction of Monroe. And then if Eric or Deacon could help weigh in on if they happen to have that agreement pulled open. The other thing I'd want to point out is I don't know if it's the full, at least for this part up north near the yellow, it's only the responsibility, I believe, for them to pay for half of it. So the city would be having to pay for the other half for that northern portion that's between the blue and the yellow. But he would also have to pave the second entranceway that was required at that time as well. So Eric or Deacon, was that accurate?
So originally there was an agreement, and I might tag Harry on this as well, between, I believe it was Mr. Wilcox and Dr. Patterson. And Dr. Patterson bought this blue tract here, which, you know, essentially, and he inherited Mr. Wilcox's interest in paving that street. So that street has to be paved. I don't think the city has any obligation to pave half of it. I believe the entire thing is theirs, but.
Okay.
But are you saying that either side of Monroe there, if they develop it, or does both sides have to be developed?
As long as there's any development adjacent to Monroe, so that would be this blue parcel here, this pink one here, or this pink one here.
So that pink one there, if that's developed, then Monroe has to be built out.
Correct.
Or you wait till 2030.
Correct.
And the yellow section is the apartments as is now?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Deacon, for making sure we have the correct story there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Brawls. Councilor Griego.
A couple of questions. The property south of that, is that a school district? Who owns that, Deacon? Right there.
Yes, that's correct. So this whole entire large tract is owned by the school district, including where the solar site is. And, you know, before COVID happened, you know, we had talked about doing kind of a bulk update of the city zoning. And this would clean up this issue right here because it's one property with two zones. And really, they should be a campus designation since they are a school. And they meet all those requirements. But that's down the road when we can do this process, you know, on a bigger scale and get more community input for something like that.
Well, the way Dr. Patterson built those RH apartments, there's no way nobody's going to develop that. The county, I mean, the school district's not going to develop that property at all. And I remember that when we put this whole program together, any development, not even associated with Monroe, any development to the north of those two units that sit on Monroe would trigger the road itself. Well, it never did. He developed two more units there, and he never did. And he finally built I think after we pushed him enough, he finally built a little easement road out there that goes into Monroe to kind of alleviate a little bit of that pressure on West 8th. But nobody's going to develop that property right there. So we're not, you know, let's be realistic. You know, if you go take a ride down there and look at it and see what you think yourself, who's going to develop that property. So, you know, and like I said earlier, he's bringing that track 3 that he talks in the communication that eventually is going to be all one, track 1. You know, that's developing in that area. So that should trigger itself, the road itself also. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Okay, I don't see any other council hands up at this time. So I'll just make a brief comment. Having access to housing is very crucial to our community's growth. I'm always excited when I see development and developers who want to invest in our community and build homes that people can live in. I have fortunately been able to look at some housing assessments here recently, and surprised at the amount of older housing stock we have in our communities. And I often hear people say that it's not uncommon for them to pay in their utility bills half of what they're paying in rent for utility costs because of the older housing stock. And it looks like people are wanting to move into something that is newer and has more amenities that will gravitate and allow people to gravitate to that part of the community as well, and help that community begin to flourish. So for me, whenever I see us having an opportunity to have something that meets within the vision of our comprehensive plan, it's important to try to nurture those type of opportunities. And I too am concerned about why our zoning department didn't make any comments, and I'm hopeful in the future that they will make comments in the future about their reasoning for not recommending the approval of this development. Okay, so it looks like I have Councilor Hensley and Councilor Griego's hands up. Councilor Hensley and then Councilor Griego.
I was actually going to make a motion, so if we want to go to Councilor Griego first.
Okay. Councilor.
I was going to just add one more comment that residents in that area want some regular residential homes there instead of the high density residential. And I was going to suggest that before Ms. Hensley makes her motion, that we send this back to the Planning Commission and ask for why they denied it, and and then bring it back and discuss it then. Let's not anticipate and push it right away and just shove it down. Let's listen to why they denied it. I'd like to send this back, and in the past, when we don't agree with the Planning Commission, we've already sent it back and say, hey, well, we don't agree with this, and let them kind of deal with it. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Councilor Daniels, then Councilor Hensley.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not, since we have other readings, I'm not sure that I agree with Councilor Griego about sending it back to Planning Commission. So I'm thinking about that so I appreciate that comment, Councilor Griego. My question was, could we have the different alternatives? And I don't know, Eric, you can maybe help with, because it was an old agreement, can we add an amendment now about Monroe, if possible? And if it's not possible, just let us know. But I would like to potentially see the alternatives available in our second reading, like high density versus potential like multi-family homes that wouldn't necessarily be apartments, although I think I am in agreement with the apartments. I would just like council and the community to be aware of all of the options. And if that is a possibility. And then I got a little confused, and I don't mean to be confused. I thought we're looking at changing the one plat, and my understanding was we were also looking to change those other two to mixed use. But then when I understood Deacon, it sounded like we should actually be changing that one on the left-hand side of my screen. You all know I'm not good with maps, to campus. And so would we be changing it to mixed use and then potentially to campus, or are we not looking at those larger plats at all right now?
No, we're not looking at the bigger plans. That was just kind of some background that we've had these discussions in the past, and just some bigger context with it.
Thank you. So it really is just the smaller plat. I got confused, and I apologize for that.
And I do want to kind of answer one other question or comment that you alluded to, and a few of you others have. So one of the important things about the zoning process and establishing the zone is, once a zone is established, the way our code works is a use is either permitted by right or it's limited. And so there's caveats, or it's conditional, or it's not allowed. And so multifamily apartments, multifamily dwellings are allowed in mixed use, as are townhomes, as are single family dwellings, but also as are big box stores, tiny homes. So there's a lot of things. And, the mixed use is a fairly broad zone as far as what it permits. So,
okay.
And so, Councilor Daniel, in regards to your question on the paving of Monroe and if the previous agreements can be changed per se. So one, I just want to make sure that there's no confusion. The agreement that's in place was approved by council. So if there's any confusion on what it included or not, we can work on being clearer in those council communications, but that is the agreement that's in place and was approved by city council. And so there's no issue of lost minutes or other items like that. It is something where the developer agreed to that so that they could do the development they wanted to do. So that agreement is somewhat done. Now, the idea of would the developer be interested is, so if council says, we're not interested in allowing this development unless you are willing to pave Monroe now, even though that's not technically being triggered. So you could place that as a new item, but then it is up to the developer to determine then if that works for the developer or not. So you can't force them to, but you can say that that's going to be, from a negotiation perspective, that's going to be something you want as a requirement, but then they may decide they then no longer want to do the development. So it wouldn't change the existing one and what those triggers are. It would be a condition of the new development. But if Eric wants to weigh in tonight or look into it more, he can obviously do that as well.
Well, it's not a clean slate in terms of negotiation because we've got a land use code that provides for conditions under which rezoning can occur. And you can act reasonably with respect to consideration of those rezoning requests, but you can't act arbitrarily and capriciously. And so if you decide you're gonna haul off and make the developer agree to change what is in an agreement from 2015 and, in order to obtain that zoning request, you'd better be able to tie it to standards that are in the UDC about zoning. And you know, it may well be that does tie in, but it's not just we're not just two parties coming to a table and negotiating something. We're a government considering a request under guidelines that are set forth in a code that we've adopted. But it is a separate request from the earlier agreements. So to the extent that it makes sense to condition the rezoning that's being requested now on paving of Monroe, then you can certainly do that.
Thank you, Mr. Suizo. Okay, all right. Thank you all for your comments. That brings us back to Councilor Hensley.
So I think with so Councilor Griego, what you've mentioned, and then Councilor Daniel, my thought is that I would really encourage for the public hearing, if it goes through, is that definitely the public comes, including maybe somebody from the Planning Commission or the Planning Commission to give us their feedback. But with that being said, from what I'm hearing so far, I do approve ordinance, or I move to approve ordinance number 18-2020 on the first reading, the rezoning tracks 3, 5, and 6 of the replat of the Patterson subdivision, and set for a public hearing on or close to August 19th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? I don't see any hands raised. Okay, Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Councilor Broyles?
Yes.
Councilor Vigil?
Yes.
Councilor Carson?
No.
Mayor Coleman?
Yes.
Councilor Daniel?
Yes.
Councilor Hensley?
Yes.
Councilor Griego?
No.
The motion carried 5-2 with Councilors Carson and Griego casting the no votes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that brings us to the next item on the agenda under finance. Discuss placing the Gallagher Amendment repeal question on the 2020 ballot.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Gallagher Amendment was enacted back in 1982, took effect in 1983, and we've been living with it ever since. It's sort of background by now. But the general effect of the Gallagher Amendment has been to ratchet down the percentage of value that is taxed for ad valorem property taxes on residential properties in order to keep the value, the relative value between residential and commercial properties essentially the same as it was in 1982. And in effect, what we've had is residential values have gone up faster than commercial values, especially on the Front Range, not so much here. So we here in more rural areas see a ratchet down effect on the amount of property tax revenue that we get because of the effect of the Gallagher Amendment in driving down residential valuations. There is going to be a statewide ballot initiative or a statewide ballot question placed on the ballot in November to essentially freeze the Gallagher Amendment. The way I read it, it's very complicated. In fact, there's an interesting website that you can look at ballot questions, and it will give you an analysis of how many years of education you need to be able to understand the ballot question. And it says that for this Gallagher Amendment question, you need 40 years of education to be able to understand it. So it could be interesting. There are a number of local jurisdictions who are putting a Gallagher repeal or Gallagher freeze question on the ballot at the same time in the event that the statewide one does not pass. So we're just bringing this up because staff became made aware that there may be some other localities, maybe even some in the valley who might be doing that. We didn't want council to be unaware of that issue. Staff's opinion is that this is not a good time to put a local Gallagher repeal or freeze amendment on the voter question or to the voters as a ballot question. And the communication kind of goes into the reasons for that. But in a nutshell, we've got uncertain economic times right now with COVID. We've got that statewide ballot question hanging over us already. We don't know how the two might interact. There's nothing particularly magical about this year. We've been living with this ratchet down effect for 40 years. You can put it on in 2021, you can put it on in 2022, you can put it on whatever you want. And if you're gonna put it on and want to actually educate the voters about what it means, it's a complicated issue. It's that 40 years of education to understand what the heck the ballot question even means. And you need time to do that. And we don't have a lot of time to get it on this year's ballot. So staff's recommendation is that you don't place anything on the ballot, but we didn't want that to be happening by default, but rather have you make a conscious decision on that.
Okay, thank you, Suiza. Appreciate it. Okay, Council, I'll bring it back to you. Looks like I have 2 hands up right now. 3 hands. Councilor Vigil, followed by Councilor Hensley, followed by Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for Eric. In the council communique, it says a question to increase taxes would have a difficult time gaining traction. I agree, but because Gallagher is so, like you mentioned, is so complex, can you tell us if the raising of taxes, who would front that bill? Business properties or residential properties?
Well, that's an interesting question because I don't really see it as raising taxes. We're putting an end to this ratchet down thing, but because of Tabor and the specific language of Tabor, if the end result's going to be that you pay more property tax next year than you did this year, even though we're not instituting a new tax or anything, you have to start your ballot question off by saying, shall taxes be increased? So it would be borne by residents. They would end up paying more than they would if Gallagher were not repealed or frozen.
And the amount of taxes a business property would have to pay, that would go down?
That would stay the same.
Okay, the same. Okay. So council, there are going to be so many questions on the ballot this November. We're going to cause people more confusion and more, it's just going to be way too much. I agree that we should not put this on the ballot right now and get more educated on the issue, and then we can always bring it back to the voters at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. Brings us to Councilor Hensley, followed by Councilor Daniel.
So one of my concerns on this, back to my CML situation, is being on a lot of these meetings. And I know this was sort of pushed really fast because of coronavirus, and there's a lot of concerns about the money coming in and the change of values that could potentially happen. And I don't know if it's changed in the last 4 to 6 weeks when I asked this question, but I was concerned about this from the beginning, because in asking Governor Polis what his plan was if this got repealed, he goes, well, we'll figure it out when the time comes. Well, I don't agree with anything until I don't necessarily trust that we will figure it out and that it's something we'll be happy with. So for me, I definitely also would rather us learn more and have more information before we rush it on the ballot.
Thank you, Councilor Hensley. Councilor Daniel, please.
So I believe that the Gallagher Amendment negatively impacts rural communities. I think that that's a given. So I can appreciate the ballot measure. I do not think we as a local municipality need to put it on the ballot this year. I do think it's very confusing. I think we would want to do a lot of education. So I very much agree with Councilors Vigil and Hensley.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Councilor Carson.
I just want to reiterate what they said. We do need to be educated on issues before we pass things. So let's just keep that in mind as the night goes on. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Carson. Councilor Brawls.
Yeah, I'm going to say I agree with everybody. Let's not make this complicated.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Brawls. Councilor Rego.
I think you have a consensus and not to do it, so move on.
Okay. Eric, I just have one question. How much would it cost us to put this on the ballot this year? Or do you have any idea?
Somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 is what we usually estimate for a ballot question. It all depends on how many entities are sharing in the combined ballot, and we don't know that yet.
The other cost would be if we were going to do education and do printed materials, yard signs. If you think back to the dedicated street sales tax and how much resources, both time and money, was spent on that. So that would be in addition to paying to put it on the ballot.
Thank you both. I agree with the rest of council. I don't think that this is the right time to put this issue on the ballot. One, it's going to cost us additional funding, and two, we don't have the time that I believe we need to educate and inform all of our residents of what they'll be voting on. So I too would be in favor of us waiting for another time to put this on the ballot.
We don't need a motion. I don't hear any dissent from anybody, so I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that brings us to item number 3A, the first reading and public hearing of ordinance number 19-2020.
Thank you. That's me again, Councilor or Mayor. As you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has kept everybody from a national level down to a local level running around scrambling, trying to figure out how to best address the coronavirus from a public health perspective. And we had a slow start nationally and statewide, but eventually have a series of orders for the Protection of Public Health issued by both the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment and by the governor's orders. And I think in general, compliance with those orders in Alamosa has been fairly good. We have at times cooperated with the County Department of Public Health and the Alamosa Police Department to go out and address situations where there was non-compliance and educate about what the orders were and gain compliance that way. But we do have some instances where education has not been sufficient. And what we have in order to address those kind of situations is really a two-pronged approach. If you've got businesses that are trying to comply with orders for the protection of public health, and they have told some customer who is refusing to comply to leave, then that becomes a trespass, and the business can call the police department and say, I've got this customer who's trespassing on my property, please cite them for trespass, and we have the police department able to do that. Alternatively, if you have a business that is refusing to comply with public health orders after being educated, we can cite them into municipal court under reckless endangerment. Reckless endangerment is kind of a big hammer. You may remember that reckless endangerment is one of the ordinance violations for which council determined that jail was available as a remedy on first offense. There's only a handful of those that when you decriminalized the Alamosa Code of Ordinances, there was a handful that you still allowed for jail on a first offense, and reckless endangerment is one of them. And I kind of think that's a bigger hammer than we want. Alternatively, the citation could be written into county or district court because the Colorado statutes provide for enforcement of public health orders as law and that can be done in county and district court. The jurisdiction of Alamosa's municipal court is limited to ordinance violations. So we don't have an ordinance violation that addresses violation of public health orders and therefore cannot write a simple, straightforward violation of a public health order into Alamosa Municipal Court currently. We have to write in either trespass or reckless endangerment violations of those municipal ordinances. So what this ordinance does is makes a direct ordinance that makes very clear and simple that a violation of a public health order is an ordinance violation as well that can be written into municipal court, doesn't need to go the longer, slower, more complicated route of going through state court. So that's really the primary motivator, is to make it a easier to understand ordinance. I think it, a violation of a public health order is a pretty clear violation versus reckless endangerment, which is a problem, obviously to be addressed, but not so clearly tied to the public health order itself that's causing the endangerment. So that's the purpose of this ordinance. And I think sums it up, unless anybody's got, the other issue is that this is set up to be passed as an emergency ordinance so that we can get it in place quickly rather than waiting for a second reading. That means there's a public hearing tonight on this ordinance. So if council has any questions for staff, we can address those, but we will need to open it up for a public hearing. And as an emergency ordinance, it has to, if it's to be passed as an emergency ordinance, has to receive a 2/3 vote.
Okay, we have Councilor Carson up to speak, and then followed by Councilor Hensley.
I got several concerns with this ordinance. I don't disagree that if we can lighten up, you know, a hard offense, that we shouldn't. I do not disagree with that at all. I'm very confused as to I was very confused as to how we could do that as a municipality, which basically goes against, you know, what the governor's mandate is, which is not being able to lighten up those offenses. So I read through the ordinance, and the part that concerns me, I mean, I've got a list of things, but I'm just going to put this out here because, again, we need to understand what we're dealing with. The part that concerns me about this ordinance is where it refers to Section 6 of our charter. I'm not sure why Eric had to include that part in it, because that, I don't know if we have to designate the mayor a monarch basically in order to do that, because I trust Ty, and I don't necessarily think that, you know, there was any involvement with this, the writing of this, but the reality is that if we pass this, we don't only lighten up that ordinance, we give the mayor emergency powers, which basically gives him carte blanche to do whatever he wants. He no longer has to clear anything with council. He can do things, I mean, I can share my screen if you guys would like to see the ordinance to the extent of what the mayor would be able to do. But, and again, I trust his judgment, and I don't think that there's any concern there. What I do see is, what does concern me is that municipalities and states around the country have passed orders similar to this. And I have seen governors and mayors lose their mind. They are passing ordinances that are completely, that will pull, you know, people's freedoms eventually in little incremental pieces. The thing is again, I don't understand why we would have to grant the mayor emergency powers in this ordinance in order to lighten up that offense. So I really need clarification, and in order to get that clarification, I don't think you can do it, you know, in 10 minutes tonight. I think we need a work session or something to that effect to get this done. Now, the other concern is that we're working on passing an ordinance and giving the mayor these powers for a minimum of about 30 days. And the governor's order is lifted in 7 days. If it's, you know, according to him, it should be lifted in 7 days. So I'm not sure why, as a municipality, again, if we can lighten that offense, that would be great. I don't know how we do that legally, unless this is the only route, which is making the mayor, basically giving him a ton more power and the power to circumvent council for any decision. He can close businesses, he can do a ton of concerning things. And again, this isn't directed at Ty, this is directed at the charter. It refers to Section 6 of our charter, and in part of that, it says authority of the mayor in emergency. He can close retail malt, vinous, spirituous, liquor stores, liquor outlets. He can order the discontinuance of selling or distributing of gasoline. He can order the closing of gasoline stations. He can discontinue the selling or distributing of firearms, ammunition. He can designate certain areas of the city as being restricted to entry upon unauthorized persons. He can declare a public curfew prohibiting persons except those explicitly authorized from being on public streets or any public place in the city during certain hours. And he can establish a communication headquarters for the dissemination of public information and reports and relating to the emergency. Now, Ty is awesome and he's a great leader, but I don't feel comfortable giving anyone that kind of power. I believe city governments are in place for a reason, and checks and balances need to be in place for a reason. So I have an extreme concern with this, and I think before we pass anything like this, we need to discuss it at length instead of having a hearing, you know, a first reading and hearing and passing it in the same day. I think that's really, really expedited, and we need to understand this more. You know, we're talking about really needing to understand the zoning issue and get more information on that, and we need all this information to make a decision on it, yet we're willing to hand over the reins of council to one individual on the recommendation of our council. And again, Eric's a great lawyer, but I'm very uncomfortable with this ordinance. And I really wish that everybody would read it and try to understand it. And if I'm way out of line, please clarify it for me, because I have read through the ordinance and it specifically states that in paragraph, I think, hold on. it states that mayor is granted, he's granted those authorities according to Section 6 of our charter. So I'm not sure why that was necessary, but I really think that we should question this. Thank you.
Well, Councilor Carson, let me try to see if I can clarify some of that.
Please do, because I'm very confused here.
Right. So section or chapter 6 of it's actually not the charter, it's the code, but chapter 6 of the code you were quoting from, and it does give the mayor those various
6.4 and 6.5.
Yeah, 6.5 is the various emergency powers that it already gives to the mayor. This ordinance doesn't do anything about that. Those powers.
That's it, but we're declaring an emergency with this ordinance. That's what the ordinance explicitly states. In the ordinance, we are declaring an emergency situation and granting him these powers.
Well, no, the ordinance is enacted as an emergency ordinance, just merely meaning that it's enacted on one reading instead of two. That's all that means.
That isn't clear to me. That's the problem, is that's not clear. And so I think we need to discuss this more before we pass it.
Well, so here's where I was going, though. First was to try to clarify the issue is that the mayor under Section 6.5 already has authority to proclaim emergencies and to issue those various orders. That exists. You read it. It's there. So this, let me finish, please. This ordinance does not add anything to those powers. Those already exist. What this ordinance says is it's a violation of the ordinances to violate an order that the mayor may happen to issue pursuant to Section 6.5. That actually already exists in ordinance as well, because if you look at Section 6.7, it says the members of the police force are authorized and directed to enforce the orders made or issued pursuant to this chapter. So there's no change in this ordinance from what already exists in the code. Then the council did declare a disaster emergency, but the mayor has not issued any orders pursuant to that disaster emergency. And the particular emergency that we're in, the kind of orders that the mayor might be authorized to issue under Section 6.5 wouldn't address this emergency at all. I mean, none of those kinds of orders would make any sense.
What's the purpose of adding it to the ordinance? What is the purpose of adding it to an ordinance that's going to be ratified? And the only people that have to sign it are the clerk and the mayor. What is the purpose of putting it in there? Because if I understand this, Section 6.3 says the Disaster Emergency Council shall be charged with the duty of coordinating all civilian defense and emergency activities. Who's the Disaster Emergency Council? And again, I would like to go back to the emergency declaration and reevaluate that, because I didn't see that in that declaration. And I didn't see that we granted him these powers already. And if that's the case, then what are we doing in these council meetings? I mean, if he's got the authority to do all these things without our permission or without our vote, that's an issue. I mean,
well, you may want to raise a different issue about amending Section 6-5. But what I'm trying to indicate is that this proposed ordinance doesn't change Chapter 6 at all. All this ordinance does is say, forget that most of what this ordinance does is say, look, if the governor or the state Department of Health or the county Department of Health issue orders, we can enforce those orders as an ordinance violation rather than in state court, or rather than resorting to the concept of reckless endangerment. That's all this ordinance does. It doesn't give the mayor or anybody else any powers to do anything.
And if I can just jump in a little bit, the area of the ordinance that Councilor Carson's referring to is usually the background area that's setting up the reason and the foundation then for what the recommended change from an ordinance perspective is going to be. So the beginning of this ordinance is identifying the powers of the Colorado Department of Public Health. It's identifying the powers of the county boards. It's identifying the sections 25-1-1114. It's identifying chapter 6, as Councilor Carson's indicated.
Well,
Identifying areas that are in existence that then lead up to then what the recommended change is. Is that another way of saying it?
Well, Councilor Carson can speak for himself, but in the now therefore be it ordained section, there is a reference to paragraph 6. And I think that's what he was concerned about, is it says, or to chapter 6, I mean. So a new section 610 is being added to the code, and it says, it's unlawful to willfully violate an order issued by the governor, the Department of Health, the county Department of Health, or if issued pursuant to chapter 6, and we just went through 6.5 about the kinds of orders that the mayor can issue, or one of those mayor orders.
So and that's the only part that's new then to the section, is that wording right there.
Yes, and that's not even new is what I'm saying, because section 6-7 currently says the police shall enforce the mayor's orders. So that really doesn't change anything.
Okay. That's going to take us to Councilor Hensley, followed by Councilor Daniel.
So I guess my question might be a little simpler, and just wanted a little clarification. So Eric, you mentioned about municipal court versus, I guess, county or state. And so can you just explain a little bit why is it, it sounds to me it's an advantage to anybody who might get a citation to keep it in municipal court for their sake. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a number of advantages. The first is that a municipal court violation does not go on your criminal record that's pulled up on a state background check. It's a municipal ordinance violation, and they're not generally serious enough to show up on criminal background check records. So that, I think, is probably the most important difference. And then secondly, I think municipal court is much more responsive and quick than state court can be. So the statute of limitations is the wrong word. It's escaping me right now. But the speedy trial deadline in municipal court is 91 days. In state court, it's 180 days. So that whole process is much more drawn out and more expensive for a defendant if they're going to deal with that. The potential fines are usually greater in state court than they are in municipal court, as limited jurisdiction in terms of the amount of fine it can enact or the length of time it can jail somebody for. I think the main difference is lack of a criminal record.
And I appreciate that clarification, because I know in discussions with people in the community and stuff, I think there was some thought that it might have been the reverse. And that helps to clarify that it's actually helping, I guess I don't want to say minimize what is happening, but at the same time, trying not to necessarily give them a criminal record or anything over this. So thank you.
Okay. We have Councilor Daniel, followed by Councilor Carson.
Thank you, Mayor. So not to, I don't want to just repeat things, but it was really important for me as I was looking at this to remember that we have already declared an emergency in our city, and that those things have already been done. And then the other piece that is really important to me is that our police force, who will be responsible for enforcing this, whether or not they write it into state court or district court or municipal court, they're still responsible to responding to our businesses. They're still responsible for helping people try to manage this. And by not having an ordinance that makes sense for us, so us not having an ordinance that makes sense for the level of violation that it is, calling it reckless endangerment, calling it something different, trespass, which it could still be trespass. I could see there being a violation of this part of the ordinance as well as trespassing if they've been asked to leave a private property. Like, I could see potential there. You can clear that up if I'm wrong. I think it gives us a lot clearer direction on what we're asking of people and what their violation actually is. And so I really appreciate the addition of this. My question goes to, yes, I think that it is important. Yes, I know we've already declared an emergency. Would it be possible to go through the regular ordinance process, or can we have a revisit of the reasoning why to make this an emergency ordinance now? Like, how many people are we talking about? Can we just revisit that publicly, please?
Yeah, so it would be possible to do this on the regular ordinance process. The difference would be, rather than being enacted tonight and being effective immediately, it could be enacted on the 19th and be effective 10 days thereafter. So the major difference is you move the effective date back from August 5th to August 29th.
What if Polis lifts it in 7 days?
Yeah, he might. I don't have any insight into Polis's head, but the more problematic orders that we've been seeing being violated aren't the governor's orders. They are the orders of the Colorado Department of Health. So I don't remember when order number 20-28 is scheduled to expire, but it's been called ordinance 20- or order 20-28 ever since it was first enacted in April, and it just keeps being extended and modified with that same ordinance number. And I would be surprised if that gets lifted anytime soon.
Me too.
Okay, Councilor Diego.
The other answer is the ordinance that, if it's passed, what's before council tonight, is only going to be applicable for current orders. So if the governor takes something away or lifts something, then clearly there's not going to be a violation for that. Or if the governor adds additional orders, then it's applicable to that. So it's only relevant to what is existing at the time of the possible infraction.
How long does our emergency order last?
I believe it.
Find it. I'm trying to find that order where we granted where we created the emergency situation. I want to find it. I want to see it, and I can't find it. Can you send that to me?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can find it.
Because it hasn't been written into the code of ordinances. I looked through it and I can't find it in there. So I was just curious.
Right, it's not an ordinance.
What is it, an emergency mandate, an emergency declaration? What is it?
It was in March, Eric, I believe, was March when they declared the emergency.
And then is that declaration, what my concern is, I guess, is that indefinite? And if it is indefinite, again, it's all very strange to me. I need to see it. I want to read it.
No, it's not indefinite. I think it's tied actually to the state's declaration of emergency.
So then it is indefinite.
No, the state's definition or declaration of emergency also has to be continually renewed.
Councilor Griego.
Thank you, Mayor. A comment and question. I really appreciate the fact that we're trying to do something to help some of these businesses that are already going through some hard times, and put some kind of criminal deal in their record is crazy, just because they're trying to exist and they're trying to survive, So I agree with that. But I agree with Councilor Daniels, where why don't we just go through the regular process? Do the first reading, and if we have it, and then put it in public hearing, and instead of pushing it through tonight. So, thank you.
You're still going to need a public hearing tonight because this was noticed as a public hearing.
Okay. Councilor Carson, your hand is up.
I apologize. I don't know it.
Okay, so at this time, I don't see any other hands up, so I was going to open it up for a public hearing. Hold on 1 second and make sure. No hands. Okay, so at this time, I don't see any hands lifted, so I would at this time open up.
Hold on, so does this mean, because it's a public hearing tonight, this means that this is the last chance anyone in the public has to chime in on this before we as a council pass it, correct?
If you pass it as an emergency ordinance with a 2/3 vote, that's correct. If you don't, you can, here's procedurally, someone could make a motion to pass this as an emergency ordinance. If that passes by a 2/3 vote, then it's done. If that fails to pass by a 2/3 vote, someone could make a motion that we pass it on first reading and set it for another public hearing on August 19th.
Okay, so my question, I mean, and that's fine either way that we decide to go, I guess. In the future, I guess whose call is it to post a public hearing without, because that should be, I guess, something we discuss in a meeting prior. I understand that it's trying to be pushed through as an emergency, but the posting is dictated by the clerk, correct? Or the manager, city manager, the attorney, and the clerk.
Well, I'm not sure at this point. I think we're splitting hairs because you're not backed into a corner. So even we've posted it as a public hearing. And so as Eric has indicated, still hold the public hearing, but council's not backed into a corner and having to still pass it as an emergency ordinance if council's not comfortable with that.
No, but I mean, but the public comment or the public's ability to chime in on it goes away, correct?
No, so they get to weigh in on it tonight because it was posted as a public hearing. But if you pass it only as a first reading, then you would set it for second reading and another public hearing for the next date. So it's almost like there's more public hearings for it.
Gotcha. I would much rather do that, but I understand it. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Councilor Carson. Okay, so at this time, I will now officially open up a public hearing for the ordinance number 19-2020, an ordinance making it unlawful willfully to violate a local, state, or federal order issued for the protection of public health. So, Ms. Martinez, do you have anyone who would like to participate in this public hearing that are in our queue right now?
I don't have anyone raising their hand, but if you are on the call and do want to speak on this, you can use the raise your hand feature, or if you're on the telephone, dial *9.
Okay.
We have one person.
Got one person, okay. Okay.
Hi, this is Dean. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Dean.
Yeah, I just want to voice a public voice for this action. This is not a public hearing. You say that you posted it as a notice for a public hearing. Yes, we understand the guidelines that you have to follow, but nobody knows about this. And so I would strongly support and suggest that you continue this to a second reading so the public can actually have time to read this ordinance. As Councilor Carson was talking about, reading it and the various parts of it, it was confusing to him, and he's a councilor, let alone a regular citizen trying to read this in a moment's notice is basically what this is being done. And so I would strongly suggest and recommend that this doesn't pass as an emergency ordinance tonight, and that you guys continue this for a second reading so the public can have time to weigh in on this and get the full transparent facts to this. Thank you.
Mr. Martinez, do you see anyone else with their hands raised or who would like to participate in this public hearing before I close it and bring it back to council?
I do not.
Okay. So since there are no other hands raised at this particular time, I will now close the public hearing for ordinance number 19-2020. And I will bring it back to council for further discussion along with staff. Okay, I have two hands raised. I have Councilor Carson, followed by Councilor Daniel.
I'd just like to acknowledge Dean L., who spoke just now. Thank you for speaking out. Appreciate your comments.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Carson. Councilor Daniel, followed by Councilor Rawls.
I have kind of a similar procedural question. I know what we talked about before. I was thinking about, do we have to do the motion as an emergency ordinance first, and that either has to pass or fail, or could I make a motion to set it for a second hearing?
You could make a motion to set it for a second hearing. I guess I would say it would be cleaner to do the emergency first if anybody were of a mind to do that, because if you set it for that, there's no point in that. If the second hearing passes, there's no reason to even consider the emergency. But
right.
If no one's of a mind to make a motion for the emergency, then that obviously solves that problem.
Okay, then I will just be quiet and wait for my fellow councilors. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Rawls.
Yeah, I don't consider this an emergency. I mean, I'm going to make a motion that this is not an emergency ordinance.
So to clarify, if no one wants to make a motion regarding it as an emergency, then the next step, if someone wants to, would be to approve on first reading and set for second reading and a public hearing on August, I forget if it was the 18th or 19th.
19th.
Or you can not approve it at all. But so you don't need to be forced, you don't feel like you need to be forced to make a motion for the emergency.
Well, I'd make a motion that this be first reading and we set second reading on August 19th.
Can I make a comment?
Hold on 1 second, Councilor Carson. I have other people with their hands up.
Thank you, Mayor. So then I guess my question is, and I respect y'all's opinions, and I think we should go that route too, but in the meantime, what do we do if we have a business? Can y'all hear me? What do we do if a business is experiencing customers who are just flat refusing to comply with the governor's orders? What do we do?
They call the police, just like the governor's order says. They call the police and they're charged with trespass.
When the police come in and they educate, like we're all asking them to do, educate, and then they refuse again, then what do we have to give some direction to our police, guys?
They have direction, Jan. They give a trespassing ticket.
Yeah, so if I can clarify, we're going to continue as we've been doing it. So until some other change happens. So we'll continue with the education, and you know, if we get the situation where there's someone trespassing because they won't leave, even when a police officer's there asking them to, then they might get a ticket for trespass. Or if we have a business that is not complying, even after we've had multiple conversations and police have talked to them, then they would issue a citation into municipal court for reckless endangerment.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Carson, followed by Councilor
Mayor, there's a motion on the floor. Councilor Broyles made a motion and no one has seconded it.
I second.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I wanted to make a comment before the second. We're not allowed to do that?
We still have time to have further comments after we have a motion and a second. So we have a motion, and is that motion clear for everyone? That the motion that was made was clear enough for everyone? Because we have a motion on the floor now. We have a second. And now if we can go ahead for further, any other additional comments, Councilor Carson, this is your time.
I was just going to ask if it would behoove us to, And again, I know that it's unlikely, but I was just going to ask if it would behoove us to wait till after the 7 days are up to act on this at all. Because again, technically we do have that order in place. We have to do nothing as a municipality for them to enforce it. All the business owner has to do is call the police, and all the constituent does is have to call the police. They can do that either way right now. So I'm just asking is, you know, are we jumping the gun? Should we wait to see if he lifts it? I'm really hoping he does. I agree that it is unlikely, but I'm just asking. And we can go forward with the motion in the second. I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Carson. Okay, Councilor Vigil, I see your hands raised, and we're still at that part to where if there's any further comments, this is that time. Councilor Vigil, followed by Councilor Daniel.
Just a point of clarification. Can we be told what the motion was again? There was a lot of commotion going on at that time.
Thank you, Councilor.
I believe the motion was to approve the ordinance on first reading and set it for second reading and public hearing on August 19th at 7 o'clock.
Okay. All right, Councilor Daniel.
Thank you. I don't think we should wait because I don't think this is the only time there are going to be public health orders issued in the future. So while I can appreciate Councilor Carson's want to see where we are with this one at the state, I don't think that should preclude us from having the next hearing and getting something into motion, because this is now set a precedent for us being able to have these kinds of orders set down in our state that then we would be responsible for enforcing. So passing it now and keeping it on our books and keeping it on our radar won't change that for me, even if something shifts at the state level in 7 days.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Daniel. Councilor Carson, your hand is still up? Okay. All right, good. We have a motion and we have a second. No further discussion. Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yes, sir. Mayor Coleman?
Yes.
Councilor Daniel?
Yes.
Councilor Vigil?
Yes.
Councilor Carson?
You're on mute, Mike.
You're muted.
No, my apologies.
Councilor Griego?
Yes.
Councilor Hensley?
Yes.
Councilor Broyles?
Yes.
The motion carried 6-1 with Councilor Carson casting the no vote.
Okay, thank you, Council. Thanks for the discussion and comments. Okay, that brings us down to item number 4A, public hearing and second reading, ordinance number 17-2020.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to keep this fast since this is the second reading and it's a fairly minor item. As you know, the city manager can only hire employees within the pay plan that is adopted by City Council. We had 3 positions that we needed to fill that were not included in that pay plan, that this ordinance then puts them at the proper location. 2 of those are with the, actually then it'd be 4, is the cart and range attendant for the golf course. It's a part-time position that would be at grade 1. And then we also are placing related to COVID and the homeless response plan that was approved by FEMA for a site manager that would be at a hotel should we have anyone who is homeless and unsheltered and test positive, which we do not have at this point in time. But that person would be at that location to ensure that the rules are being complied with, that person is quarantining like they're supposed to, that there's not a lot of visitors, but also to ensure that they have resources if they have a need. So the wraparound health and meals and those types of things as well. And so this is the second reading, and I can answer questions, but you should also open it up to a public hearing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, it looks like we have Councilor Carson who wants some questions asked before I open it up for a public hearing and bring it back to council. So Councilor Carson. Councilor Carson, you muted.
I jumped the gun. Go ahead and open it for public hearing.
No worries. Okay, so what I am going to do right now is I am going to open up a public hearing for the second reading of ordinance number 17-2020, an ordinance amending the established pay plan for city officers and employees to address positions at the golf course and temporary positions for homeless housing due to COVID-19. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Martinez to give instructions for those who would like to make any comments in the public hearing.
If there's anybody on the call that would like to speak on the Zoom app, you can use the raise your hand feature, or if you're on the telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand.
So do you see anyone at this time, Ms. Martinez?
I do not. We do not have anyone raising their hand.
Okay. Seeing that we have no one who's wanting to make comments in the public hearing, I will now close the public hearing and bring it back to council and staff. Councilor Carson, please.
This is pretty straightforward, guys. I'd make a motion that we approve ordinance number 17-2020 on second reading, amending the employee pay plan.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, I don't see any. So Ms. Martinez, will you please take the vote?
Yep. Councilor Daniel?
Yes.
Councilor Vigil?
Yes.
Councilor Carson?
Yes.
Councilor Hensley?
Yes.
Councilor Broyles?
Yes.
Councilor Griego?
Yes.
Mayor Coleman?
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, that brings us to committee reports. If anyone have any committee reports, I will recognize you by your hands being raised. I see Councilor Carson, followed by Councilor Hensley.
I don't, I apologize.
Oh, no worries. Councilor Hensley, followed by Councilor Daniel, followed by Councilor Vigil.
All right, so the first one, I failed to mention this last meeting is at golf board. It was decided that meetings are only going to be every other month. And so just wanted to let you know, that's why you haven't heard much about the golf board, is we've gone to every other month versus every month. So just letting you know, that's the update there. And then I was very lucky. I'm the backup for the library board and was called in to do my backup duty. And not a whole lot to report, except that I just really want to acknowledge what a phenomenal board we have for the library board, and also the staff and how they work so well together, and especially really challenging times right now, and really being creative through this whole time of how to still engage our community to be involved in the library, to read, what things they could do to try to get more participation and engagement, and then also coming up with a plan to reopen here real soon. So just wanted to share that, and it's always a pleasure to be part of that meeting.
Thank you, Councilor Hensley, for your report. Up next, we have Councilor Daniel, followed by Councilor Vigil, followed by Councilor Broyles.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to let everyone know I did attend the Housing Authority meeting last week. They are really focusing on their employee benefits and renewing that, and have spent a lot of, I really think, thoughtful time thinking about the best plan for the employees and what that's going to mean, as well as adding some playground equipment for the people who live there. And I think it's going to, and they've already added bike racks. So they're really working to improve the feel of the community in the Housing Authority. And I just really appreciate the dedication. They also received some COVID funds, and they've done a couple of surveys with the people who live within the facilities to see like what they could need and if there were needs out there. They didn't get a lot of response. So if you do hear from people who have things going on due to COVID, they can reach out to Anna or Julia in the front office and talk to them about what the COVID things are. But it was really related to technology, especially for the younger kids who may need it for school and different access things, as well as some other items. So they do have funds to support people. I just don't know that everyone knows how to talk about that. So getting them in contact with Anna or Julia would make some sense. And then I also attended the Homeless Coalition meeting at the end of last month. And we have gone through all of the partner organizations and kind of the resources from the community to talk about what services people can offer, or the types of services people have. There were a couple of people who were absent from the meeting who will have the opportunity to present to us if they still would like to as we go forward. But now the committee's job, or the coalition's job, is really to kind of pull all together the information that we learned, talk about where our gaps are, and try to find ways to meet some of the needs that have been identified in the most equitable and responsible way for the populations that are served. So the unsheltered homeless, the people who are using the food bank services, people who are, in that risk of being homeless, and really kind of looking at what our services and supports look like to help prevent homelessness, as well as to assist with people who are currently homeless. So I'm excited about that kind of work that we have going up. I really feel like it's going to give a lot of nuts and bolts. The other thing coming from that meeting, but not as a part of that coalition, is if there are people interested in working on plans for the winter for people who may be unsheltered, there are a few members of the coalition who are creating their own subcommittee, again, not connected to that, so it's not a part of the coalition work that is happening. So if you have community members that are interested, they can reach out to Donna Weehee, who works at SLV Health, or to Lance Cheslock, who works at La Puente. So this is a specific kind of focus on people who are unsheltered during the winter, so we can kind of plan ahead since it is already August. And those were my 2 updates. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your report, Councilor Daniel. Up next, we have Councilor Vigil, followed by Councilor Rawls.
Thank you, Mayor. Have attended a few Alamosa School District meetings the last couple of weeks. I'm sure you all know what's kind of going on over there. I don't need to get into that. But what's more important is the upcoming school year and how they're trying to plan to teach our students. They are, I'm just looking at their release here. Registration closes Friday for students. If you want to change your child's registration, placement, and or need to update forms, you can log on to the Parent Power School portal. They've done a really good job of getting, getting the word out on registration. So you can choose to have your child be taught online on a computer, or your child can go to the school. This is a very ever-changing situation, as the school districts across the valley have to work with their local public health departments. So that it's crazy. It's the way it goes, and just a little bit of empathy for everybody involved would be great. They have they have numbers for English speakers and for Spanish speakers. Okay, and there is an opening on the school board if someone wants to apply for that. And yesterday was I don't know how well it was attended, but there was a coffee with Cody. That's Miss Cody, the assistant superintendent, I believe, or the director of curriculum. And it was an opportunity to learn more about Alamosa District's restart plans and to ask questions and share ideas. So a lot more information will be coming out probably daily on the reopening of schools in the time of COVID. Thank you.
Thank you for your reporting, Councilor Vigo. Appreciate that. Up next, we have Councilor Rawls.
Yeah, I'll report on the senior citizens. They continue to have limited operations. They're open from 9 to 12 Monday through Friday, and they are not serving lunches. So I just wanted to give that update. I think everything's okay, and as they're allowed, they'll open up to have longer hours sometime soon.
Thank you for your update, Councilor Gross. We appreciate it. Okay, do we have any other hands? I don't see any other hands up at this time. So I will move on to staff announcements.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have just a few. We were informed the last few weeks from the school district that due to budgetary constraints, they will not be renewing their contract for the SRO position. So we have moved that position into one of our vacancies that we have, and we'll be eliminating that from the budget as a separate position. I also wanted to share with council that our housing committee selected a consultant to hire for the housing assessment. So we have signed that contract and work is beginning this month. It will carry over into 2021, probably the first quarter, but they are working. It will be the same company that has been talking with Dawn with the SLV Housing Coalition on the valley-wide housing assessment as well, which then will obviously see some synergy from the information they're collecting for both of those plans. And with that, I think Eric and Holly had a brief staff announcement.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brooks.
I just wanted to briefly update council that we did indeed file a claim in the Purdue bankruptcy on July 28th, which was prior to the deadline. So there are a lot of people in line for that bankruptcy claim. I will actually be talking with the Denver City Attorney tomorrow on some of concepts of coordinated city actions.
Thank you, Mr. Sweezo. Okay, Ms. Martinez.
So my comment is in regards to the board dinner. I need direction on what you guys want to do for the board appreciation dinner this year. Currently we have it scheduled for September 28th, and that's the date that the brewery had available. And I did discuss with them on the seating. They said they would have available 65 seating with their spacing. And if we needed more than that, they could open up the coffee shop area, but it split the board people into two buildings. Invitations, I send out over like around 100 invitations. So we usually have a showing of about 60 to 75 people. So I didn't know if you guys still want to have it this year, if you want to move it. Heather did send an email, I think earlier this week, recommending we probably shouldn't, just based on the whole COVID restrictions, but I just want the direction from you guys.
Council, what are some of your thoughts? I see Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel like we would just keep kicking this down the road until it becomes safe. I would much rather express our thanks to our board committee members in maybe a different way. So either, I don't know what would make sense. Like, I don't want to, make any suggestions that would break the budget, but I would be interested in knowing other ways we could recognize them potentially, other than this dinner, because I do think we want to be really mindful of the perception, even though technically the requirements would be met. I don't think it's a good, it just seems risky in the space that we would have for that number of people. So I think we should just try to figure out a different way to recognize our volunteers, which are very, very important. This is hugely important. I just think we need to come up with a different plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Any other comments from any other council members? I don't see any hands. Councilor Griego, followed by Councilor Hensley.
I think everybody looks forward to having a meal with council and to visiting with each other. And I kind of agree with Heather. maybe we need to cancel this year and then put it on for next year when all this stuff finally settles down, you know. But I think they do look, you know, to sit together and have a meal together and visit and I think that'd be the proper way how to thank these people instead of giving them a gift card or something like that, you know. I'd rather cancel it this year and then look at it next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Councilor Hensley.
I kind of agree with Councilor Daniel. I'd like to see an alternative. I hate to just cancel. So many things just got canceled. And an alternative, it probably, like Councilor Griego says, it's not going to be the same as a meal. And we're going to miss that. But at the same time, I do feel like we need to celebrate this. And I hate to put something on you, Holly, but if maybe we all sort of brainstorm, and I can't think of the idea of what it would be yet, but maybe sort of what are some alternatives we could do that may not totally be having the meal, but at least still celebrates our volunteers.
Okay. Councilor Rose, followed by Councilor Carson.
Oh no, I was thinking maybe we could have it something, a get together, hors d'oeuvres, department by department for an hour some night, so they can be recognized. Like I'm really mindful, like, you know, for the firefighters. I mean, they give a lot of service, and so do the others. And I just like, maybe we could break it out department by department and have an open house for an hour. I'm just throwing that out there.
Thank you, Councilor Gross. Councilor Carson.
Why not do something maybe like, I mean, September's not that cold. Why not do something maybe outdoors, like even at the golf course? We have all those tables outside. We can, I mean, it's going to be catered by someone anyway. We own a park. We own a golf course. You know, we are a city. We have other options besides a restaurant. We could use a bigger footprint and have, you know, a really nice dinner and do something. Like you say, everything's got canceled. It would probably be, I mean, it wouldn't be that difficult to pull off, but I suggest we move forward with it and do something outdoors. Something, like I say, the golf course has, we can adjust that for 65, 70 people with the outdoor seating and the indoor. And then if we're going to have, you know, speeches, I mean, I've been at things we had there that were great. But I think we should, I just think we should do something. And I think that we have a lot of options to do it outdoors. Again, you know, people do want to enjoy a dinner. And I'm not saying a barbecue, but there's plenty of catering options, and all of our local businesses have suffered this year. I mean, we could even include a couple different businesses to help us cater it or something if we really wanted to get elaborate. But I think, you know, we have other options besides canceling it.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilor Carson. Councilor Vigil.
I was actually going to say the same thing. We could do something outdoors, social distance, and keep it safe for everybody. I think people would appreciate that, but they need to be recognized somehow. So I think maybe we can look at something like that. I don't know if we could pull it off, but if we can, especially at the golf course or one of our parks, sit everybody apart. We have one of those a speaker, you know, something like that. We can get it done.
Okay. Councilor Groves, your hand's still up. Councilor Carson. Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I would love to be able to have something. I think we have to remember part of the reason for the social distancing, either outside or in like closer spaces, is that you are only with your family at your table, right? Like you're only with people you normally swap spit and other debris with that you would already be exposed to. And so I know that's not appropriate, I'm sorry, but those are the kinds of things that we need to think about when we're saying, yes, let's do something outside. Like are we really going to have the socialization opportunities and still be safe, and we'll all have to wear our masks. We're talking, I just like, yes, absolutely. I want to do something, and I appreciate, so thank you for bringing up the outside, because I didn't have that thought, but I also want us to be doing the outside in the right way, in the spirit of the order, and just make sure that we're cognizant of that and what that really means for the social aspect of this.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Councilor Grego.
One more comment. Maybe the wrong term is canceled, you know. I just hate for us to come together and somebody gets sick and you know, where we can move it, not cancel it, move it to maybe 2-3 more months ahead of time, you know, instead of use the word cancel, because you're right, a lot of stuff has been canceled. But move it to where it's safer, instead of getting everybody together and then somebody gets sick and then it's you know, I'd feel real bad about that. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Grego. I personally, I thank everybody who volunteers to help out on all our committees and everything that they do on the different boards. And I'm quite sure a lot of people know that we appreciate them. And I'm quite sure people understand that their health and their safety and the public's health and safety is #1 priority in all of our minds. Sometimes we have to make tough decisions. Sometimes we have to actually not hold an event and do it at a later time for the overall betterment of the community as a whole. And that's where we are right now. So I would be in favor of us postponing this event and doing it at a much later time to where we can show appreciation. I do understand, just like Councilor Grego mentioned, that people do want to intermingle with the council members to get a feel, to hear about things that are going on, talk with staff, and hear about different things going on in different departments and things like that. And we would be restricted to a certain degree under the current situation that we're in, and also the perception of having a large gathering. I don't think that's really a good image to have at this time, even though we all would like to participate with group events right now. But I just personally don't feel that this is the right time. And I do believe that people would understand if we have to forego this event this year until a later time. If we do decide to do that, I would like for people who are members on boards this year to be included in the invitation when we finally do hold an event. So if they're no longer participating on a board at the time that we do host this event, I still would like all of the people who are participating right now to have the same opportunity to participate in the future. Those are my thoughts. Did that help? Did those comments help at all? Oh, Councilor Grego, your hand is up.
My hand's up?
Yes, sir.
Well, do we have a consensus? Because we got to give Holly some kind of direction.
Okay. Ms. Martinez, how do you want to move forward with your consensus?
I feel like that was half and half. Some said outdoor and some said just move it. So is it move it to like next year and include everybody, or find something else to do?
I'd say move it.
Move it.
I'd support moving it.
Move it.
I got 4. So we'll move it next year then.
You got direction. Move it.
Okay, we're good. All right. Thank you. Let's move on since we just moved that. Let's move on to the next item. Let's see here. Local liquor licensing authority actions. Liquor licensing items. We need to have a needs and desires hearing for a change of location for Juanito's Mexican restaurant.
We do have Juan Rangel from Juanito's. He's here. Juan, do you have video?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but I can't see you.
Is that just mute?
While he's doing that, Mayor, if I could just set the stage. So this will be a public hearing to establish whether there is a need and desire on the part of the adult inhabitants of the neighborhood that would support this change of location. And the way we typically do this is that you will turn the matter over to me to conduct the hearing. I will invite Mr. Rangel and anyone else associated with Juanitos to introduce council to their request, and then open up the hearing first for those in favor, who want to talk in favor of the application, and then for anybody who wants to speak in opposition to the application. Then it will come back to council who may have further questions of the applicant. And typically, if council feels comfortable doing so, it'll vote and direct me to prepare written findings consistent with that vote. So
Okay.
apparently I didn't talk long enough to let the video come on.
Okay, no worries. So what we'll go ahead and do right now is we'll go ahead and turn the hearing over to Attorney Squeezaw. It's all yours.
All right, let me start off just if I could have the clerk confirm that the property was posted on July 2nd and legal notice published in the Valley Courier on July 18, 2020?
Yes, they were both done as required.
Okay, and I do note that Zoom is a little bit different. So I note that attached to the Novus entry were both a photo of the posting itself, which we'll mark as Exhibit A, and also petitions that were submitted by Juanitos, which we will mark as Exhibit B. I think council's had a chance to look at those. Just my rough count was 73 or so signatures on those petitions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Rangel to give council some background on the requested change in location.
Okay, so we have the video, but we don't know if you can see us.
We cannot.
Yeah.
So we're new to Zoom, so can anyone kind of explain? So we're in the settings section, and it gives us like video, audio, share screen, all that stuff. And we can see us on a screen, but we don't know how to get our video to you.
On what kind of computer are you on?
It's a desktop. It's an HP desktop.
In the lower left side of your screen, of the black screen, there's two buttons, a mute button and a stop video button.
Okay. I just have a mute button.
Okay, you probably didn't join with video. When you join the meeting, you have to accept the join with video. And if you're on a desktop, I mean, it's got to have a webcam also.
Yeah.
So you probably missed that step. It happens.
Okay.
Is it necessary for them to be on video for us to go forward with this hearing?
I don't think so.
I don't believe so.
Okay, so
They might have to be promoted to a panelist, Holly. Just.
I just tried that, so I'm gonna see. Let's see if you got a notification to start your video.
Okay. Do I just hit start my video?
Yeah.
Okay. Yay.
There you go. I see you now.
Hi, everybody.
hello, Juanito.
We can still see him.
Hi, Charlie.
Well, I still can't see Juanito. I see the agenda.
Do you see him in the
That is speak. His video will come up when they speak. When the person's speaking, that's who's highlighted.
All right.
We probably don't need the agenda though. If we stop sharing that screen, it'll make everyone's picture bigger.
There you go.
Okay, Eric, you want to go ahead and tell them what?
There we go. Now I can see him.
Yeah, so Mr. Rangel, if you would give council a little bit of background about what it is that you're requesting here. that would be useful, and then they may have questions for you.
Okay, well, my name is Juan Rangel. I'm under a business since 2011 with a liquor license. I haven't get no violation at that time with almost 10 years. I just want to complete my service in my restaurant because it's a full service. It'll be nice to serve alcohol. Most of the time, my patrons, they ask for a beer or two with the meal. I've been losing quite a bit of business. They're walking out because I don't have no alcohol. So that really hurts. So I'll be asking for you guys to support me and approve my liquor license.
Council have any questions for Mr. Rangel?
I do.
We have Councilor Daniel has her hand up.
Thank you. I lost my little button. I apologize. Mr. Rangel, when you said, so you've not had any liquor license violations the whole time you've had your liquor license?
Not that I remember. I remember one time I have a new employee, and I think, I believe it's like 7 years ago, one of my new employees got set up by the inspector, I believe. I don't know if he's can remember that, but okay. Because that was the only time I've been, and after that I've been really restricted by IDing everybody. If it's older or not, I've been IDing every single one.
Wonderful. Do you send your staff through any specific training, or do you just train it on your own?
No, we go to the classes every time it's required. So we go and take our classes.
Great. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Councilor Garrigo, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Juan, what are your operating hours up there?
It's 11 to 9 for now. Hopefully I'm kind of like waiting for open up the bowling alley because I have plans to open the bowling alley just for the community. I don't have plans to open late for the community. I just want to focus more for the families that have kids. So maybe the latest at 10 o'clock. And I don't want to have no more bins after that because it's up to after 10 or 11 it's asking for trouble. I'm not looking for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Juan.
Yeah.
Councilor Broyles.
Yes, Juan, it's David Broyles. You've gotten some petitions. How many petitions have you had?
Oh, I have like, how to say, about four or five pages. I give it to Ms. Martinez. I can count it, but it's quite a bit of ones.
Let me share your petition.
How many people would that be?
I did a rough count, Councilor Broyles, and came up with about 73.
Okay.
And I just run out of pages, so that's why that's the last one I can put together for Ms. Martinez.
Councilor Hensley.
So my question, you said there for a second that, and I may have missed it. So are you planning also to run the bowling alley yourself?
Yes, miss. I have plans to provide a place to the kids can come and have fun. This because there's nothing to do here in Alamosa. So I just, like I said, I want to focus more on the families for the kids, so I can provide something they can do out there because there's nothing to do here in Alamosa.
No, I think that's a great idea. So my question is, and I'm not sure if you saw how it was before, so would you serve food sort of from both sides, similar to how they did it before?
I have plans to serve the food from my restaurant towards the bowling alley. So yes, I want to do that.
So have the sit down side, but then the bowling side as well, and also serve the alcohol both ways.
Yes.
Awesome. That's very exciting to hear that you're wanting to do both.
That's why. That's one of the reasons I don't want to stay open so late because my business is a family business, and I want to keep it that way. I don't want to bring people over here and get drunk and ending with all kinds of problems. That's not my idea.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see any more councilors' hands, so I'm going to turn it over to comments that the public wants to make, and we'll start with people who are commenting in favor of the application. And David and Carol Osborne have their hand up and have been troopers to sit through this entire meeting to this point. So the floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. Mayor Coleman, City Council, Ms. Brooks, Mr. Deacon, and Mr. Sweetso. Thank you for the opportunity to visit with you this evening. We're here to support Mr. Juan Rangel's liquor license request for Juanito's Restaurant. Juan has a long successful history in Alamosa, running a reputable and professional business that provides an outstanding service to the community and aligns with and supports the City of Alamosa's mission statement. Mr. Rangel is an honest, genuine, and hardworking resident that has committed so much to this community. Tonight, Mr. Rangel is present to represent his business in reference to the council's decision surrounding their liquor license. While we don't quite understand the regulations and requirements for a new liquor license because they've changed locations, we have no hesitation in actively support Juanito's Restaurant's liquor license request and would strongly encourage City Council to approve and support this request. This concludes our statement this evening, unless there's questions or comments. If there aren't any, please feel free to contact Carol or myself at 719-480-9024 or David Osborne SLB at gmail.com. Thank you for your time this evening and the good work you do representing constituents in Alamosa.
Thank you.
All right, I see no other hands up. There is a telephone number call in, which to raise your hand on the telephone, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe was pressing *9 if you want to speak in favor of the petition or in opposition, because nobody's hands up. So I'll ask for anybody who wishes to speak in opposition as well.
There's someone with their hand up.
Yeah, someone has their hand up.
This from I'm here with Juan at Juanito's, and myself personally, I'm not a drinker. I don't do drinking at all. A lot of you know me personally, and I see his respectful business as a very friendly, family-oriented business. And I agree with him getting his liquor license because I agree that he has not had any violations that I know of, and he really is respectful in serving that and make sure that people are not getting, for a better lack of term, plastered. So I agree with passing this.
Thank you. Your name again, sir?
Tony Mestis.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't see any other hands up. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Mayor, I don't see anybody else wishing to speak, so I will close the public hearing and turn it back over to you to have council address the issue. I see David Broyles' hand is up, but I think that was from before.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Suiza. I appreciate that. Okay, so council, bring it back to council here.
I had some comments, Mayor.
Okay, sure. Here we go. We have Councilor Griego, followed by Councilor Hensley.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I've had an opportunity to know Juan for a lot of years, and I visited his establishment when he had it over on 6th Street. As it was mentioned earlier, he is a hard worker. He runs a nice, clean place. I'm so happy to see that he has an opportunity to continue serving the good food that he does serve. And every once in a while, people, tacos and enchiladas go with margaritas and stuff. So a lot of people, they choose to have some kind of cocktail with their meals. But I just can't overemphasize the fact that Juan is a very respectful person, and the business that he runs it first class. So that's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Griego. Okay, Councilor Hensley.
So I definitely support this. I think from everything I've seen, has had no major, obviously, violations, is well respected. I don't know him personally, but I've definitely been in the restaurant prior, and we've always enjoyed ourselves. And I just think the previous restaurant, people that ran the restaurant and the bowling alley had liquor licenses as well. I am truly excited, besides the fact of having another great restaurant, but also having that bowling alley. I think there's a real need for that. And so just the whole combination, it really lends itself. And so I highly support this.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Hensley. I don't see any other hands raised at this time. I too have known Juan for several years and had an opportunity to coach his son in youth football. And he's an excellent volunteer in the community, and his restaurant has good food, and they also host a lot of different nonprofit organizations who have meetings there on a regular basis. So it really shows that he's a part of our community and really invested in this community, and wish you much success in your endeavors in that new location, Juan.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Councilor Griego.
I would like to go ahead and waive the procedures that we usually go through and make a motion to approve this transfer tonight so that this gentleman can continue his operation out there. So I make that motion that we go ahead and approve this license transfer.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay. Ms. Martinez, would you like to take the vote?
Yes, sir. Councilor Broyles?
Yes.
Councilor Carson?
Yes.
Councilor Griego?
Yes.
Councilor Hensley?
Yes.
Councilor Daniel?
Yes.
Mayor Coleman?
Yes.
Councilor Vigil?
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Wish you the best.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, council, back to the agenda. That brings us down to council comments. Do we have any council comments at this time? Councilor Vigil, followed by Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two things. Number one, I just want to point out and give some respect to a pillar of Alamosa over the last 20, 30 years. That's Lloyd Engen. He passed away. I never knew him personally, but I heard a lot of great stories about him, and a writer for the paper and involved with athletics, and just a great man. So want to offer my condolences and respects to Mr. Engen. Also, I guess my next thing is a question to Heather about if you can clear up a little bit about the rodeo, the roundup, and how it was supposed to be here in Alamosa. Now it's going 8 miles north of town, and how that decision was made, and the role of the public health director, all that stuff. Please, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. So the rodeo, the organizers have known that in order to use the city facility, they needed to comply with the governor's orders for outdoor events. And so I think a lot of people in the public know generally that means, okay, you have to limit it to 175. But there's a lot more details beyond that, such as the ingress and egress, the hand washing stations, the social distancing. There are some creative ways to maybe be able to do more than 175, depending on the space, if you can have different spaces set up, just some different things like that. So there's actually, there's a lot out there in regards to the governors and the public health, the state public health orders. And so when those discussions began, they knew they had to comply with those. But what came to light today is understanding how to comply on the face mask wasn't maybe thought through as much as it needed to be thought through. And so I think first, many people don't realize that one of the orders, in order to have a public event during this time, an actual event, is that it does require face masks for the attendees and the employees and the organizers and all that. But it does require it for the attendees. And it's not just as you're entering in, it's for the entire event. Now there's the caveats on if there's a health condition for kids under 10, and then obviously if they were eating or drinking something, we wouldn't have that type of thing. So I wanna make sure we're clear that like Dawn and her team had spent a lot of time of working with Jess with Parks and Rec, as well as Della with Public Health, on how to meet all of those different requirements. And almost all of those could be checked off. The conversation that started to hang it up today, though, is on the face masks, because what they weren't understanding is that for compliance with the face masks, unfortunately, we have individuals in the public who they don't agree with the orders. They don't feel like they need to wear a face covering. And that's their prerogative, but they are also likely to still show up at the event. And we can't turn a blind eye and give permits to events or give use of our facilities to events if the organizer's not going to enforce the face mask requirement. And I don't think they thought through what enforcement meant, because it's not just you tell them and then they comply or they don't comply. That's not what enforcement is, because what that was going to play out as is we probably would have at least half the attendees, if not more, not wearing their face masks. And that's clearly not consistent with what the intent of what those orders are. And so that thought process to have that conversation with Dawn was, it is your responsibility as the organizer to ensure compliance. And if there's not compliance, then the rest of the event won't be allowed to go forward. And that's not something she wanted to risk. And I think it's unfortunate that it's not something that we can say as a condition. And she had it listed on the website, when you buy your tickets, know that we're complying, you'll need to wear a mask. They were going to do the announcements throughout the event, so you need to wear a mask and all that. I just don't think they realize that the number of individuals that maybe would still refuse that, and that could create complications for them. We had an event either a week or two ago that was a bit of a test for this, and that organizer ran into exactly what we would anticipate any other event to run into, which is as people were coming, the organizer would indicate they need to wear a mask, so they put a mask on, but the minute they're into the event area, they were removing their masks. And so then the organizer would go around and try to get them to put the mask on, and when he was there, they'd put it on, but then they would take it back off, type of thing. And so it's unfortunate that this has to happen because we desperately want to allow these events to happen when they're being compliant with the governor's orders. And these organizers want to have these events to happen, and our community needs something to be celebrating. But if people are not going to comply, then that puts the burden on the event organizer to get compliance. And if they can't get it, then they need to ask the individual to leave. And if the individual doesn't leave, then they can call police. Dawn wasn't comfortable with that. She did not want to do more than just make the request. And unfortunately, that will not make the event compliant with the governor's orders. There was no extra requirements from a city perspective. It's just when they read the requirement that there has to be face masks, they didn't think through how that plays out in real life and what conversation they might need to have with some attendees who refuse to comply. And it was a decision that Dawn didn't feel comfortable asking someone to leave, and that's her choice. And I fully respect that, but it also means then that there is a strong probability the event would not be in compliance. And she knew that then if they're not in compliance, it could jeopardize it continuing. And she did not want to jeopardize that.
So thank you for that clarification. now the event is going to be held at their private residence?
I guess. And I don't know why, I don't know how that's okay, but it's not within my jurisdiction.
So that's my next question. It's not under the city's jurisdiction. Is that event in jeopardy of being able to go through per the county and the sheriff's office or the health department? I
can't speak to that. I do know from reading some news that the Attorney General, and it seems like their bigger events, has issued cease and desist orders for different areas within the state. But it sounds like they're probably for larger events, but some of it was on private property and some enforcement of those types of things. But again, that's not my jurisdiction, and I have no idea what the intent may be for those other jurisdictions.
Yeah, and I just want to make a quick note that the Honeycuts and the city's relationship over the years with this rodeo has been amazing. And that event has been so huge for Alamosa, especially in the late summer with economic development and just a great family event. And it just sucks to see how it's going down.
Well, and I just would like to share along that lines, the phone conversations I had with Dawn today were very pleasant. I mean, we've got a very strong working relationship. We have been a longtime supporter, both financially and with in-kind support and those types of things. And the rodeo, and it's just top notch. I mean, the professionalism they put into it to bring it here and the impact it has on the community. So none of that I feel is different. It's where Dawn had to decide where her comfort level was and make a decision based on that. And we needed to make sure she had the information to be able to base the decision on the location. And so the conversation Dawn and I had was very positive, and her comments, you know, she goes, I know I read the language. That's what the governor's orders say. I just don't feel comfortable telling someone they need to leave. And that's her prerogative.
All right, thank you. Thank you for both of you all for bringing that up and having a conversation about it. Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. The first is that First Street looks amazing. So I know that construction is taking a long time, but the part that is done looks wonderful. And I know the rest of it will look just as good. So thank you for that. I also wanted to thank Heather specifically for responding to a concerned citizen regarding the water tower and some questions that they had. I really appreciated her help in making sure that I was not speaking out of turn and really making sure that the person had a great, the right information. So I appreciate that. And then I just wanted to say I'm really looking forward to the training for the next 2 days. I think there's going to be some great things with that. And just to let staff know, I will not be attending the in-person part. I'm going to do it virtually. And then I'm also looking forward to the retreat that we're having. So thank you for getting all the planning and all of the things that needs to happen with that. But I'm really looking forward for the learning opportunities that we have coming up.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Councilor Carson, followed by Councilor Vigil.
I just wanted to make a comment to the effect of what Councilor Vigil said. The relationship with the Honeycuts has been great, and that rodeo has been great for our city. And I just wanted to state that as long as the governor continues to keep these orders in place, we're going to see negative effects to our community, to private businesses, to everybody in general. And, you know, the reality is that nothing's impossible for he that doesn't have to do it. And when you can shoot an order off, off the hip, and alcohol sales after 10, things like that. They're just going to continue to decimate us as communities in general all over the state and all over the country. And it's a concern. So, good luck to them in their ventures with the rodeo. I hope they have a successful run. I really do, because until we start standing up for some of these rights that we're getting incrementally taken away from us, we're going to continue down this path. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Carson. Councilor Garrigo.
Yes. With the rodeo again, I wanted the respect that Dawn gave us. She couldn't comply. She respects our facilities, and we do have a good working relationship with them. And I just want to thank her, you know, because if they couldn't do it right on a city facility, they weren't going to jeopardize it. So I think we need to admire that. And there is a good working relationship. And I think once all this stuff goes through, it'll continue. You know, I've had a chance to visit with them, and they just didn't feel right to go into a facility of ours and then have somebody break the law and stuff, and they didn't feel right. So I respect that, and it'll come back. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Rigo. Councilor Carson.
My hand should be down, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay. Looks like that's it. No other hands. Okay, since there are no other hands up, I will officially adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councilors. Enjoy your weekend.
Stay safe.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.